Great. Can I just say a late hello, everybody? Sorry for I got real technicals going on. No phone or anything, but hello, sorry to be late.
And somehow you managed to be here, Diane. So we very much appreciate that. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. We do have not only a quorum present, we have the entire membership present. Our first order of business actually is to convene as the Board of Canvassers for the 2022 election. Kevin, do we need a motion in order to do that?
No, you can start off just as the Board of Canvassers.
Okay, we are starting off as the Board of Canvassers. The Board of Canvassers for the 2022 election would include Ami, Diane, Alex, and me. And I don't believe that the other members are eligible because they were not members of the board at that time. And I guess I should be calling on Boris for our business for the Board of Canvassers.
Good afternoon, board. We have one untimely received ballot from 2022 election cycle that we would like to present to the Board of Canvassers to reject as untimely received.
Can you give us the details of it? When was it received and when was it postmarked?
So the ballot was sent from Israel. It was received in this office on June 30th, and there is no postmark on the envelope from the Israeli post office for me to decipher when it was mailed from the country.
All right, then I will move that we reject it on the grounds that it is untimely.
Second, I will second that.
All those in favor of Ami's motion, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. The ballot is not accepted. Boris, is that all the business we have for the Board of Canvassers?
That was the only one.
Okay, excellent. So we will now close the Board of Canvassers and we will convene our Board of Elections meeting. The first thing on the agenda are the board president's comments, and I do have some comments to make today. You all may remember that during the public comment period of our July 31st meeting, Mr. Michael Fletcher correctly pointed out that my good friend, Montgomery County civil rights icon Roscoe Nix, who has a school named after him in Silver Spring, was listed as an active voter on our voter rolls, despite the fact that he passed away in 2012. Staff's research found that he last voted in Montgomery County in May of 2009. He moved to Georgia shortly after that. He died in Georgia on January 4th, 2012. The Electronic Registration Information Center, known as ERIC, was formed by 7 states, not including Georgia, later in 2012. So it did not exist at the time that that Mr. Nix passed away. And Georgia did not otherwise notify Maryland of Mr. Nix's death. Because of federal law, we were not allowed to cancel Mr. Nix's voter registration without his death certificate, since the people who lived in his former house did not return his election mail to us. After our July meeting, I reached out to Mr. Nix's daughters, who provided his death certificate, and Mr. Nix's voter registration was canceled on August 21st, 2023. He did not vote in Montgomery County after he moved to Georgia, but he did vote in Georgia after he moved there until he died in January of 2012. Now, the Maryland voter registration for Roscoe Nix's wife, Emma Nix, who passed away in 2014, also in Georgia, was a little different. It was canceled in 2020, and it was canceled because of undeliverable mail to the Nix's former Montgomery County home that was returned to us. And her voter registration was canceled after 2 federal cycles as provided by federal law. She also last voted in Montgomery County in 2009, right before she moved to Georgia. So I believe that the Nix's voter registrations amplify the need for continuous and robust interstate cooperation and exchange of information that would support our staff's list maintenance efforts. and more voter education in regard to the need to return official election mail to the Board of Elections that is addressed to someone who no longer resides in the household. I believe that board staff and all of our partners should take part in emphasizing the need for voters to return election mail that is addressed to someone who either moved out, passed away, or is a previous property owner. By doing so, we will all be contributing to the accuracy of Montgomery County's voter rolls. So that is all that I wanted to say in my remarks today. Are there any, oh, Diane, you have your hand up. Oh, and Alex has his hand up. Okay.
Yes,
I will just say,
on
Diane,
this.
okay, I understand. I just will say, Diane, on this, that this is, you know, concerning a voter who's been dead for a long time, who's not alleged to have done anything wrong, and that I am trying very hard to get the business that we do have to do today in time for the schedule that you told me that you have.
Okay,
So I just wanted to make you
Thank you.
mindful of that. Okay, Diane, go ahead.
no, I appreciate all those comments. I just don't want to move on. Just a quick question, if I got the times and dates wrong. What would not, the fact that he voted the last time so long ago, it seems to me, would there not have been 2 presidential elections in that cycle? Which,
It's only 2 presidential elections after his mail is returned to us, and his mail was not returned to us.
okay, I thought it was
where-
after he was not actively, if he had not checked in to vote in any of those elections, we would have that in our records. I thought that's where the 2 election cycle timeframe came, that we saw he had not voted in Montgomery County since, I think you
No,
said 2008.
No, let me see if I can explain it.
And if it's worth you and me talking about this offline, I'll do that.
We can, but I also want the public
I'd
to
be
understand.
happy.
I also want the public to understand what happened. Many years ago, before federal law changed it, it was the case that if you didn't vote for a certain number of elections in a row, you were removed from the voter rolls. That is no longer the case. And so under federal law, in
Okay.
order to remove somebody from the voter rolls, you have to have that election mail be returned, and then you have to have them not vote in 2 successive cycles. For Mr. Nix, that
Okay.
election mail was never returned, and because he died in a state that did not tell us that he had passed away, he was not removed from the voter rolls.
Okay.
For Mrs. Nix, for whatever reason, and we can't explain what happened, but it has something to do with whoever bought their house and lived in their
Yeah,
house, or whoever bought it from them. That mail was returned when she missed 2 elections in a row. She was removed from our rolls.
Okay.
Kevin and Boris, did I get that right?
You did. They're both under federal and state law, under the Maryland Constitution as well. The frequency under which someone votes is not a basis to go ahead and cancel their voter registration.
Okay.
So there has to be some event, such as return mail or something like that, that would begin the process of 2 election cycles occurring before that person could be canceled.
Okay. I've been giving out the wrong information. Thank you.
May I just add at the very end that we follow the same process, and last week in December, following every federal cycle, we go through the list of all the voters who are in active status for 2 federal cycles, and we cancel them. And if you anyone who is interested can go to our website, check monthly statistics for any December that follows any federal elections, and we'll see that the number of voters who were canceled on our rolls based on this fact.
Thank you, Boris. Alex.
Mr. President, thank you. A question or two questions. What does it mean to have election mail returned? Does it mean that the Postal Service returns it itself as undeliverable, or does it mean that someone who lives at the address where the voter used to live themselves returns it? And if the latter, what does it mean, or what do they have to do to return it?
I believe that what they have to do is to cross it out, write refused or no longer lives here and put it back in the mail. But I'm going to defer to Boris on that question.
Well,
Oh, Kevin, go ahead.
yeah, Alex, it could be either. It could be returned as undeliverable by the postal service, or the person who lives there could go ahead and say no longer resides at this address and returns it to us.
And it does not require extra postage, right? They can just put it back in the mail?
That's
I-
right.
I believe
Okay.
so, yes.
Okay.
It's business reply. And if I might just add, if the board would recall, when we send out sample ballots to all voters in Montgomery County, at the very back, there's a box to check if the person is no longer residing at the address to which sample ballot was sent. So that's another way how we collect that information.
So maybe we can just make that bigger, bolder and reposition it when we go ahead and have that
Well,
conversation.
and it's interesting you say that, Diane, because Boris told me very recently that that's kind of part of what he's planning.
Thank you.
but-
All right.
but we
Sorry
will-
for,
Right, but we'll let him tell us what he's planning at the appropriate time. But yes, we're all thinking along the same lines. We want the public to understand what they can do to assist us in this process. Obviously, it would be great if the Postal Service were to catch every instance of these things, but not everyone does change of address, and you understand how that all goes. So, okay, Daniel.
So for the benefits of the public, wanted to see if we can also address when someone moves, even within Montgomery County or outside of Montgomery County, and they do change their address. How is that mail? Is it forwarded to the new address before maybe they change the address at the NVA or through the Board of Elections outreach efforts?
Boris.
Okay, very, very briefly, there are different sources from which we would collect that information. The best source would be the voter himself or herself, if they would go online and update their voter registration the moment they found a new established new residency, whether it's within our county or some other county. The second option, Daniel, you rightly pointed out, is a return mail from the post office with the forwarding address presented on that yellow sticker that comes with that mail. And of course, the third option is a national change of address database that we receive through ERIC, which provides us with information on any voter who registered a new address with the post office once they moved. In each case, the same by federal law regulated procedure is followed, meaning we do not inactivate a voter just based on that piece of information. We send a confirmation mailing to the same address, giving a voter 2 weeks to respond. If there is no response in 2 weeks, then only then voter is moved to inactive status.
Thank you for that detailed explanation, Boris.
Okay, anything else on this subject before we talk about changes to the agenda, if any? Okay, now as far as the agenda goes, everyone has received it. You'll notice that it's not necessarily our traditional agenda. And in part, that was designed because we really have to talk about early voting and bylaws today, not a different day. And because we've kind of front loaded the schedule for that purpose. And then we will pick up with what we would normally have had at the beginning of our meeting after we make sure that those two subjects are covered. Are there any proposed additions or changes to the agenda? Okay, we'll move to the next item, which is disclosure of campaign contributions, attendance at fundraisers. Does anybody have anything that they would like to report since our last meeting on July 31st? I will report. I'm not sure I'm required to report this, but I think I am, and I won't be required to report it if the new bylaws pass in their current form. But I will report a $40 expenditure to attend a state party fundraiser that has not happened yet but I did make the contribution of $40 already to attend that fundraiser. The fundraiser is on October the 1st. The contribution was, I'll get you the exact date, but it was roughly the middle of August. Anybody else? Okay, then the next thing is the staff presentation the staff of the staff proposal on early voting sites for the 2024 election cycle by Boris Brajkovic, the election director, and Mindy Williams, the operations manager.
Thank you, David. Just give us a moment. We are trying to upload the presentation so we can share the screen for the Zoom call.
Sounds great.
It seems that there's a glitch on my side, so Lisa will pull it from her side.
Okay.
Make the full screen.
Okay.
Okay, so we will, Mindy Williams, who is the operations manager for the Board of Elections, and myself, we will present the staff's proposal for the early voting sites for 2024 election cycle. I'll do the just the opening part, Mindy, and
maybe through the notes.
yes, and then Mindy will take over. So the criteria that you see on your screen is the criteria that was enacted in 2021, and the board followed this criteria to select 14 early sites for 2022 election cycle. The criteria refers to accessibility of the early voting sites to disenfranchised communities, proximity to dense concentration of voters, public transport, of course, is the key as well. Equitable distribution of the early voting sites through the county geographically, and approach that would maximize voter participation. Basically, you relying on already established community centers or the facilities that voters frequent outside of the election cycle as well. The reasoning that we tried to follow when we were coming up with the proposal is that the first thing that we came across is the fact that in presidential cycles, the turnout of voters is higher than in gubernatorial cycle. So we would expect a higher number of people voting in 2024 than was the case in 2022. In addition to historical differences between presidential and gubernatorial cycles, we also have some open seats that will potentially add to the turnout in our county itself. We are talking about statewide open Senate seats, congressional 6. What we discussed previously in different board meetings, and I think I mentioned quite a few times, I believe that our voters have not settled on what's their preferred mode of voting. Is it vote by mail? Is it early voting? Is it election day? And that is something that we would require more data for us to make some definitive opinion that we would project going forward. One gubernatorial cycle is not enough. I think that data from 2024 will help us. I do try to emphasize that for me personally, I hope board would agree that 2020 election cycle was an anomaly that doesn't provide useful data for any kind of projections. Just if you think how the voting was organized in the course of the pandemic. We also follow the news we see that there is a increased interest for returning ballots early, voting early. Is it through vote by mail or early voting? We also believe this could add to the number of voters who will show up in person during 8 days of early voting in the 2024 cycle. The last thing that's on this slide is a burden that's always on staff, is that we have to plan to accommodate any option voters choose to vote, to cast their ballot. We can estimate, but we have to be ready to accommodate large number of voters, whether they decide to show up during early voting, vote by mail, or on election day at their home polling places. The reasoning that we followed produced the outcome, which we will go into more details in the course of the presentation. But our proposal is to maintain the 14 locations that board approved in 2022. We believe that keeping the same number and same locations for both gubernatorial and presidential cycle will enable voters to develop, we call it standardization, for voters to decide what is their preferred way of voting, what's their preferred facility to go early to vote, or whether it's at the election day polling place. What is key for us, and I believe that everyone recognizes that, when we present the maps, you will see that 98.4% of all registered voters in Montgomery County are placed within 5-mile radius of early voting site. On top of that, majority of voters falls within this distance of multiple sites throughout the county. Maintaining the same number, maintaining the same locations would, as I said, provide better data, better planning input for elections that will come after 2024 cycle. I'll just go through the maps very briefly. On this map, you will see 14 early voting sites that we had in 2022, and that staff is proposing to the board to adopt for the 2024 cycle. You will see, the name and the addresses throughout the county. These are 5-mile radius of each of those early voting sites. You will see that with exception of early voting site in Damascus, all other early voting sites overlap to a great extent. That overlap provides multiple options for all the voters to choose which early voting site to visit. Of course, we all know that some voters go to the early voting sites that's close to their home. Others choose to go to the one that's close to their workplace, but that's their personal decision. Our goal was to provide multiple options for everyone to take advantage of.
Minority population.
Okay, the next slide is the same 5 miles coverage of early voting sites overlaid over the minority population in Montgomery County. If you look legend and where the minority population is concentrated in the county, you will see that all of these areas are covered by multiple 5-mile radiuses of different early voting sites. We also added the household income as just another data point or demographic point for the board to consider, but there's a pattern that you will see it's visible through all the maps that we have prepared. Voter density, again, I believe that these sites cover, as required by the legislation, all the densely populated areas of the county, and those that are most densely populated are overlapped with 5-mile radius of multiple early voting sites. And this map is the voter turnout. Again, if you look on the legend, you will see that data that was projected on the map includes voter turnout data from 2018 and 2020. Again, my personal preference would be 2022, but it still indicates the high turnout areas and their proper coverage by multiple early voting sites. Okay, now we go to details about other requirements that we had to meet for the early voting sites and the presentation of the sites themselves. So I'll give the floor to Mindy Williams.
Okay, I'm Mindy Williams. I'm the operations manager here at the Board of Elections. Just a quick run through of public transportation. This list here is a sample list that was provided by the Department of Transportation during the 2022 cycle. We are currently working with DOT to provide the most up-to-date public transportation options for not just early voting, but drop boxes as well as polling places, election day polling places that we will upload to our website as we get closer to the election. Department of Transportation does reevaluate their routes several times throughout the year. It is September, January, and May. So the hope is that we would have the most up-to-date information from them during May that we will update, we will post to the website. Information is also available via the MoCo Votes app, as well as it goes out on the sample ballot that goes out to every registered voter in Montgomery County. Down here at the bottom of the slide, you have the real-time predictions. It's a real-time trip planner app that is provided by the Department of Transportation. I can put my address in here, my location. It will give me every route possible via metro, rail, ride on to the location, as well as route times. And then we'll go quickly into each site, starting with the Activity Center at Borer Park. Returning to this site again. As you can see, it was the site 2014 through 2022. We're proposing to use the gym the hope is for both the general as the primary as well as the general, but due to, you'll see in the next slide, due to a scheduled gym floor replacement project, we do have a contingency plan in place for the general. There's a little over 7,000, close to 7,500 square feet, close to 150 parking spaces. It is accessible via public transportation as well as ADA compliant. Just a few photos of the gym. This is the voting room itself. And then we move on to the contingency plan in the event that the gym floor project is not completed. The hope would be to use the plan is to use the social hall A, B, and C, which was used in the 2016 elections. It's a little under 3,000 square feet. Again, we still have 147 plus parking spaces accessible via public transit, as well as ADA compliant. Photo of the room. This is just an aerial photo of the location itself, depicting the entrance. Sample no electioneering zones pre-2020 election cycle. You'll see all the no electioneering zones provided throughout the presentation are from various cycles. These are just maps that show the main crossroads, cross streets, as well as location of the facility, and a sample transportation map that has some of the provided bus transportation routes to the facility. And we go directly into Bower Drive Community Recreation Center. Bower has been was a site from 2010 to 2012, and then again in 2022. We're proposing to utilize the social hall. There's little less than 100 parking spaces. However, there is overflow parking at the adjacent middle school, at Wood Middle School. It's public transportation. It's accessible as well as ADA compliant. A photo of the room itself, an aerial map to include the entrance. Sample no electioneering zone. Map of the main crossroads, sample transportation map. We go into the Nancy Dasick Community Recreation Center. Dasick was an election site in 2022. We're proposing to utilize the social hall again, little over 4,000 square feet, little under 200 parking spaces, public transportation and ADA compliant. Simple photo of the room, as well as an aerial. No electioneering zone, crossroads map, and transportation map. Damascus Community Recreation Center. What's new with Damascus? We are proposing to utilize the full gym at Damascus. The initial proposal was the full gym includes the social hall as well as the main gymnasium. We were proposing to just utilize the gym. However, due to poor signal strength in just the gym, we elected to encompass both spaces, the social hall as well as the gym. It's a little over 11,500 square feet, ample parking, public transit accessible, as well as ADA compliant. Sample picture of some of the voting room. I was unable to get a full photo of the room. We will have it for future presentations. Aerial map. Sample no electioneering zones. Main streets, as well as sample transportation maps. Into the executive office building. We are proposing to utilize again the auditorium as well as the lobby area. Combined, it's a little over 3,500 square feet. There's parking, close to 200. It's public transit accessible as well as ADA compliant. Sample photos of the auditorium as well as lobby. Aerial photos of the facility itself to include the entrance as well as both parking options, the COB parking and the jury lot parking. Sample no electioneering zones. Crossroads, sample transportation. One thing to note about EOB from some of the others is it is Metro Rail accessible. It's 0.3 miles, a little less than half a mile away from the facility itself. It's one of the few. And then we go into the Germantown Community Recreation Center. EV Center from 2010 to 2012. We're proposing to utilize the gym again, a little over 7,600 square feet, ample parking, public transit, as well as ADA compliant. Voting room. Aerial photo to include the entrance. Sample no electioneering zone. Crossroads, and then our sample transportation map. Lawton Community Rec Center. Lawton, our proposal would be to utilize the gym as in the past. It's been an EV center from 2014 to 2022. A little less than 7,000 square feet, 6,750. Limited parking at the town of at Lawton. However, the town of Chevy Chase will suspend permit parking and allow parking without permits on the streets that surround the facility. Public transportation as well as ADA compliant. Sample photo of the gym. Our aerial photo. Sample no electioneering zones. There's multiples for this particular site. We were unable to get all photos and all to encompass the full no electioneering zone within the same photo. Our sample crossroads, Lawton again is another facility that is
That's right.
Metro accessible. I think it's a little over half a mile. I think it's 0.53 miles from the facility walking distance. No, it's 0.56 from the Bethesda station. So sample transportation map. The Mid-County Community Recreation Center, we are proposing to remain in the social hall, which is a little under 4,000 square feet. Mid-County's been an EV site from 2014 to 2022. 118 plus parking spaces, public transit, and ADA compliant. Photo of the voting room. The aerial photo. Sample no electioneering zone. Our crossroads map, and then our sample transit map. Potomac Community Recreation Center. Proposal would be to utilize the gym as we have in the past. Potomac's been an EV site from 2016 through 2022. 6,640 square feet, 124 parking spaces, public transit accessible, as well as ADA compliant. Photo of the voting room itself. Our aerial photo, which depicts the entrance, some sample no electioneering photos, our crossroads map, and then our sample transit map. Maryland Praisner Community Recreation Center. Proposal for Praisner would be to move from the social hall to the gym for both the primary and the general. Praisner's been an early voting site from 2010 through 2012. Gym square footage is a little over 6,000 square feet, 151 parking spaces, public transit accessible, as well as ADA compliant. Gym photo, our aerial photo, sample no electioneering zone, crossroads map, and then the sample transit map. Sandy Spring Volunteer Fire Department, we are proposing to utilize the Oak Room or the ballroom at Sandy Spring again. It's been an EV site since 2018, 4,100 square feet, 128 parking spaces. There's public transportation and it is ADA compliant. Our voting room photos, our aerial, sample no electioneering zones. There's 2 photos for this one again. Our crossroads map, and then our sample transportation map. The Silver Spring Civic Building at Veterans Plaza. Proposal would be to utilize the Great Hall and Atrium again. It's been an EV site since 2010. There's total little less than, well, that's 5, 6, little less than 7,000 square feet. There's over 1,000 parking spaces in the garage adjacent to the facility. It's Town Square Garage 61. Accessibility to public transit as well as ADA compliant. Our sample voting room as well as the atrium. Aerial photo that shows Town Square Garage 61 as well as the entrance to the facility. Sample no electioneering zones. Crossroads map and the sample transit map. Silver Spring is another Metro accessible site, Metro Rail accessible site. Believe Silver Spring is roughly, it's a little over half a mile as well. Wheaton Library and Community Recreation Center. We are proposing to split this site for the 2024 cycle. Wheaton has been an EV site since 2014. The proposal for this year would be to utilize the social hall for the primary. Excuse me, from Thursday, May 2nd to Saturday, May 4th. We would do a flip from the primary. We're not going to go from the primary to the general, from the social hall to the gym Saturday, May 4th, after the polls have closed for the day, and then we would close early voting out in the gym. Same thing with the general, run Thursday through Saturday, close out in the gym. Voting room. And then this is a sample of the gym, which would be used from Sunday through Thursday. Gym is a little over 11,000 square feet. These slides got out of order. Gym specs, square feet, a little over 11,000, 240 plus parking spaces. Again, we'd be using the gym Sunday through Thursday for both the primary and the general. Our aerial to show the entrance to the facility, as well as the entrance to the underground parking garage. Sample no electioneering zones. There are multiple entrances to Wheaton. This is the entrance on Georgia Avenue. The slide prior is the entrance on the other side. Believe that's closer to the Arcola side. Our crossroads, as well as the sample transportation map. Wheaton is another metro accessible site, a little over a half a mile walk as well. And then White Oak Community Recreation Center. Proposal for White Oak would be to move from the, again, do a split. We'd be utilizing the social hall as the voting room from Thursday through Sunday. Sunday evening, the IT team would come through, flip the space, and we would reconvene in the gym Monday through Thursday for both the primary and the general. Social hall is a little over 4,000 square feet. The facility itself has 131 parking spaces, public transit accessible, as well as ADA compliant. This is our social hall photo. This gives us the gym specs. Gym is a little 7,315 square feet. Again, we'd be using the gym from Monday through Thursday to close out early voting. Our aerial map, no electioneering zone, sample crossroads map, and then our sample transportation map. That concludes the 14 proposed early voting sites. Then our proposed early voting alternates for 2024 would be the East County Community Recreation Center. East County is we'd propose to use the social hall, 3,520 square feet, 250 parking spaces, accessible via public transportation, as well as ADA compliant. Sample voting room, aerial map, and sample crossroads. Sample public transportation as well. Then we'd be looking at the Longwood Community Recreation Center, more of a mid-county-ish type of option. We'd propose to use a social hall, 3,388 square feet. 108 parking spaces, public transit is available weekdays only. It is ADA compliant. Our aerial map, sample crossroads, and sample public transportation map. And then finally would be the Upper County Community Recreation Center. We propose to use the social hall, which is 2,448 square feet. There are 55 parking spaces available at the facility itself. However, there's over 200 parking spaces available at the adjacent Upper County outdoor pool, which is 25 yards from the entrance to the facility. It is public transit accessible. There's a bus stop that stops right out front, as well as ADA compliant. Voting room, our aerial photo, our map that shows our main crossroads, as well as sample transportation map. And then that concludes our early voting presentation for 2024.
Thank you very much, Mindy and Boris.
You want me to just this?
I think before we get to board discussion, we'll have the public comment period about early voting only, so that we can hear from the public before we take action as a board. I will have a motion when it comes time for the board discussion. But I want to start by asking Boris, are we aware of anyone who is seeking to address the board today about early voting?
Lisa?
There has, just a second here, it's refreshing the page. No one has asked to address the board.
We don't have anyone who signed up to address the board on this topic today.
Okay, now we do have one hand up among the attendees from Aura Johnson. I do not know Ora Johnson, but if Ora Johnson is seeking to speak to the board, I would be inclined to hear her. Jerry, would you be able to promote her? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, this is hi. I'm Ora Johnson. Some of you I have seen, of course, Diane and Kevin and at Canvas. Okay,
Thank you.
here's
Could you turn on your camera? Would it be okay if
oh okay.
if we
Okay.
get to see you too?
Oh, okay. And who is that? Alexander. Yeah, I saw him at NASA Basic some time ago. Okay, how you doing? Hi guys, and I see you have some new faces. Okay, this is one of my doubting because Jane Lawton, as you talk about it, is one thing to say a bus goes by there. A bus goes down Wisconsin Avenue, stops on Wisconsin Avenue. The Jane Lawton Center is deep into that neighborhood.
Yep.
You or I would have a problem walking there. There is no access unless you're by car, because if you get off that bus, that's a very long walk. I don't know distance in terms of miles or whatever, but I know that it's a very long walk because it's like deep in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Did you have an alternative suggestion?
Um, no, because I don't know. I the first time I looked at all your maps, and I know it would have been good to have that when I started talking to you, but I don't know unless it's some kind of way that that you can provide a shuttle or something from the area up there, because I would suggest that one of you go and look at it. I mean, I know it because I have worked there as a judge and I have voted there.
Yep.
But normally, most people where I am, I'm right here in Bethesda, I'm close. But if I were riding a bus, it would be it's a long way down there, because most people here, I think they go to other early voting centers because if you don't have a car, it's very hard to get to.
Well, I thank you for that comment, Ms. Johnson. I've actually been to that location many times, and I've actually also walked it from Wisconsin Avenue from the Metro. And I believe that Ms. Williams said it's approximately half a mile. And I realize that for some people that would be too much.
Yeah.
And for other people, it wouldn't be. But we very much appreciate your comment. Do board members
Oh.
have any questions?
And
I'm sorry, did you have something else you wanted to say?
yeah, I was just I'm looking at you talk about NASA Days has been there too. It's one bus that goes down there, but that neighborhood primarily serves the residents there, because I'm not sure that bus schedule, but it's not a normal bus schedule. And
Yes. Well, Ms. Johnson, I would just say that there's no question that among the 14 proposed early voting sites that we used in the 2022 election, there's going to be a variety of public transit access. Some are going to have very easy access, some are going to be kind of in the middle, and some are going to be not so much. But as the election director pointed out in his presentation, the goal is to give people options of different options. So, for example, if someone is a Metro Rail rider who doesn't want to make the walk, the half mile, the executive office building is far closer to Metro Rail than the Lawton Center is. But if somebody is driving, they might have other options. And of course, part of what we try to do is we try to have as many options available for people as possible. But I do agree with you that if someone was only coming from Wisconsin Avenue, that for some people that would be a long way. They would have, they'd have some other options as well, and there are buses that go directly to some of our early voting sites. Thank you very much for giving us your comments. Is there anyone else who has comments concerning early voting? Okay, then we will move forward to the board discussion. I'm gonna start with a motion. Um, and I'm going to actually make the motion myself. Um, I move that the board approve the staff's recommendation that we return to the same 14 early voting sites that we used in 2022, and that we request approval from the county executive and the county council to use 14 early voting sites for the 2022 elections. Let me list the 14 sites. The Activity Center at Borough Park, Bauer Drive Community Recreation Center, Damascus Community Recreation Center, the Executive Office Building, Germantown Community Recreation Center, Jane Lawton Community Recreation Center, Marilyn Praisner Community Recreation Center, Mid-County Community Recreation Center, Nancy Dasick North Potomac Community Recreation Center, Potomac Community Recreation Center, Sandy Spring Volunteer Fire Station, Silver Spring Civic Building, Wheaton Library and Community Recreation Center, and White Oak Community Recreation Center. Is there a second to the motion?
Mr.
Diane-
President,
Diane?
I will
Oh, okay.
second it.
Okay,
But
thank you.
I have a correction. You misstated by talking about the 2022 election. What you mean is the 2024 election.
Okay, I don't remember exactly what I said, but we are using the same sites as we used in 2022
For
terms of-
2024.
for 2024.
Yeah.
Right. My motion was that, I'm sorry, I see what you're saying. Yes. Let me restate my motion, and thank you for that correction. I move that the board approve the staff's recommendation that we return in 2024 to the same 14 early voting sites that we used in 2022, and that we request approval from the county executive and the county council to use 14 early voting sites for the 2024 elections.
I second your motion.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the correction. I apologize. I was kind of focused on the fact that it was that it was the same. Okay, since the staff has already given their presentation, let me start by explaining the reason for my motion, and my thoughts about this. I consider our proposal, the staff's proposal today that I am moving that we support, to be a mixture of continuity and change from what we did in 2022. The 14 early voting locations are the same locations that we used for the 2022 elections, but in several locations, we are proposing to move to larger spaces within the buildings for part or all of early voting. Before I walk through that list, let me say that this is part of a trend that we have been following for many years now. And we have moved from social halls to gymnasiums in Potomac, in Germantown, and at the Lawton Center. I have been pushing very hard, as some of my colleagues know, for us to be in gymnasiums wherever we can. Now, there's a number of reasons for that. If we, in some places, we are in more than one room, and it's harder to manage in more than one room. In some places, it gets really crowded if you are not in the largest room available. This year is a presidential election year, so it's usually our largest turnout election. And obviously, we want to be fair to all parts of the county, so we don't want to have lines in one part of the county and smooth sailing in another because we are willing to go to a gym in one part of the county but not the other. So it's been something that we've been doing, but it's also been something that we are not blind to the needs of other parts of Montgomery County. And so we've been having an ongoing discussion with both the Montgomery County Recreation Department, Robin Riley being the director there, and I think I've had lunch with her twice. Boris and Daniel accompanied me for the second one, and we've discussed her needs and ours, and trying to manage both. Um, we've had conversations with both the staff and the mayor of Gaithersburg about our strong desire to be in the gymnasium at the activity center at Boer Park. Um, and I was the board member assigned there when we were in the social hall, and I will tell you that it would be far better if we could be in the gymnasium. And I want to thank Mayor Ashman and Daniel for helping to arrange that conversation. Mayor Ashman seems very motivated to do his best to make the gymnasium available. Obviously, where construction is concerned, people don't make guarantees, so we do have a backup plan. But they do seem very motivated, and I think that they have a good sense of where we're coming from. So, you know, we are doing our best to move into larger spaces all over. So let me just run through for a moment the changes that are since 2022. Now, I will say that in 2022, you may recall that we had to move the primary election, and yes, this time I actually do mean 2022, Ami. For the primary election was moved by the courts, and it was moved roughly 3 weeks later. So it was held on July 19th when it was originally scheduled at the end of June. When we moved to July 19th, we were the last folks to the party, but and Mindy remembers this because she used to work at the Silver Spring Civic Building, that there was a pretty large wedding that was scheduled in the Great Hall during the time that early voting was scheduled to take place. And while it might be hypothetically possible that we could have bumped somebody from that space, that did not strike us as being the right thing to do. So we came up with the idea of moving on the Sunday night of early voting from one location to the other, and to be in the larger space when we had more voters. Because usually, as Boris showed us in the data in our last meeting in July, the last 4 days have much higher voting than the first 4 days. That went really smoothly in Silver Spring, thanks to the excellent IT staff of the board. I did lend a hand personally, which I'm not promising to do necessarily this year. As you all know, that might not be a good idea for me. But I will say that it was done splendidly in record time, and unfortunately for our staff, the punishment for good work is more good work. So for this election, the recreation department made very clear that they really need the recreation spaces for Thursday, Friday, for weekend times. So in 2 locations, in White Oak and Wheaton, we're going to do a mid-early voting switch from smaller spaces to larger spaces. In Wheaton, it will be done on Saturday night after the polls close. In White Oak, it will be done on Sunday night after the polls close. And that was a balancing of those two things. The next place where we're moving from a social hall to the gym is at the Praisner Center in Burtonsville. And for those of you who've been on the board before, you may recall that that there were some issues that we were concerned about with the elevator at the Praisner Center. But we got creative, and I also want to thank Daniel for checking out the Praisner Center with me. There is a side door that is right next to the gym that does not require stairs or elevator. So basically, we found a way around the elevator. It will require having 2 no electioneering zones next to 2 different entrances at the Praisner Center, and the voters can go in from whichever direction, they park in. But at the Praisner Center, the provisional ballots used to be in the room across from the social hall in a separate room, and Boris has told me with some, and let's just say emphatically, that being in one room is better than having to manage people in different rooms. Then we are using the entire gym rather than a portion of the gym in Damascus. That is partially due to a signal issue, that is also to be ready for the possibility of higher turnout in Damascus this year. Some of you may be familiar, but my understanding is that both the local and national Republican parties are encouraging people in 2024 to consider utilizing early voting. And if they do utilize early voting, which Diane has reminded me is in-person voting, which is her preference, although she goes for election day, but she does say that early voting is in person. I'm sorry, Diane, you're mute, and I apologize for quoting you because I know you'll have your opportunity, but I wanted to make sure you knew that I was listening. So so in any event, we are expanding in Damascus, and then in Gaithersburg, like I said, we are hoping to use the gym. The resurfacing is scheduled for August through October. Early voting is the last week of October. We don't have an issue for the primary. For the primary, the gymnasium is available, but for the general election, if they finish before the last week of October, then it'll be available for us. And if they do not finish before the last week of October, then we will be in that in the social hall space. And I really want to thank both the mayor of Gaithersburg and the city manager of Gaithersburg for working with us to make their best efforts to be in the gym. So we are still remaining in social halls in 3 locations: at Bauer Drive Rec Center, at Mid-County Rec Center, and at the DASIC Center. And there are basically 3 different reasons for that fact. In the Bauer Drive Rec Center, it would be a substantial expense to upgrade the electrical work there in order to be able to use the gymnasium for early voting. It is scheduled for renovation within the next few years. Boris is already talking to Robin Riley about making sure that when they upgrade the gymnasium, that they upgrade the electrical. In Mid-County, signal was not sufficient in the gymnasium, and signal is an absolute requirement for early voting to prevent people from being able to vote more than once. There has to be a way to record that they have, that they've checked in to vote. And then, wait a second, the third one is, the DASIC Center. The DASIC Center has a more than 4,000 square foot social hall. It's huge. And if you guys have been there, it's a beautiful building named after our former colleague on the Board of Elections, who is also a former county council member. There hasn't been, at least thus far, the need because that facility is so large. We already have large rooms at the Silver Spring Civic Building and at Sandy Spring. And I would say about the Executive Office Building that for the last several elections, we've been using the lobby area for check-in, which provides a lot more space inside the auditorium. So I do think that we have done a lot to make sure that folks at all of these locations in different parts of the county will have the greatest possibility of not having to wait in lines. Obviously, there's personnel aspects to that, not just facility aspects to that, but I think that the staff proposal balances those needs, also takes into consideration the needs of others, whether it's the recreation officials for Montgomery County or the recreation officials for the city of Gaithersburg. But I think that this proposal is a good balance. I agree with Boris that 2020 is not a good example of much of anything. It was an anomaly. I think that we need to have another election, a presidential election, hopefully in a somewhat normal year. We will find out if it's a somewhat normal year. It's too early to know. But if that's the case, then we will be well prepared to take a look at what our voters are deciding to do as far as their choices of different ways to vote and what our needs are for the future. Okay, I realize that was quite a mouthful, but I did want to explain the rationale behind this proposal. I think I want to especially thank Boris, Mindy, Janet, Jerry. I know that there have been Chris. I know that there have been a variety of people on our staff who have worked on this. You guys may have heard the expression that a certain Christmas-related figure makes his list and checks it twice. Well, Boris makes his list and checks it about 5 times. Or he has Jerry check it, or he has Mindy check it, or he has other. I can see by the look on Chuck's face that I'm striking a chord here. So anyway, the point is that I think our staff has been very careful about trying to balance all of these needs and to come up with a plan that works for everyone. But I do thank you for all of that. Diane, you are mute. You need to unmute yourself.
Thank you. I just wanted to get in the queue when you asked for member comments.
No, you're on.
Okay. I have nothing but positive comments, and I don't even have many to make. I just want to thank everybody for the incredible work and suggestion. And David, your thorough the extra that you were able to add on top of the excellent presentations. You've got my full support. I think it was an excellent presentation by everybody. So that's it for me.
Okay.
I think, oh, well, actually, the most important part, yes. I am particularly supportive of these excellent early voting sites because I think the gold standard for voting is in person. Early in person is absolutely the platinum standard, to make sure your vote is in, and there are the fewest steps between you and having it accurately counted. So anybody who is out there listening, I fully endorse every aspect of this early voting plan you put together. So let's just promote it loudly and largely. And thank you very much, David, for letting me know that you have heard my ad nauseum comments along this line. Thank you.
I would not have used that phrase to describe your comments, Diane, but you have certainly been persistent and consistent in your praise of in-person voting. And I appreciate that. Are there other board members who would like to make comments? Okay, seeing none, let's move to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Okay, it is unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, we are now at the public comment period for subjects other than early voting. And I understand that Senator Kagan was interested in speaking. Do we have others who have signed up, Boris, for speaking about subjects other than early voting?
No, we don't.
Okay, Jerry, would you please put Senator Kagan on our panel? I'm guessing that if we're having delays that she may not have responded yet to being promoted. So Jerry, is that accurate? Okay, so I'm not getting an answer from Jerry either. Boris, should we proceed, or what would you like to do?
If you don't mind, we are just checking if we have a connectivity issue with Jerry. So just give us like a minute to physically check, and then we will get back.
All right, I'm gonna take this opportunity for a 60-second recess. We'll be right back. Boris, what is the word?
Jerry has promoted Senator Cheryl Keegan to be a panelist, and we would need her to accept it in order to address the board.
Okay, there she is.
Good.
Okay, and there she is. Okay, Senator, thank you for joining us, and we're always happy to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations for that. Friends on the Board of Elections, old and new, congratulations to the new folks, and for the returning folks, Alex, David, Diane, thank you for your continued service. And Ami, sorry, now that I get your face back. Thank you. You guys put in a lot of long hours. Kevin, thanks for all that you do, and Boris, to you and your team, grateful. Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville and the vice chair of the Senate committee that oversees all election legislation. I wanted to do just a couple of quick things. First, David, I was so glad you told the story about Roscoe Nix, our beloved Roscoe Nix, and the story and the importance of ERIC and maintaining interstate databases. I want to let you know that that's something I've been working on and talking about a lot. And for the first time in Indianapolis at the NCSL, National Conference of State Legislatures, I actually sponsored and passed unanimously, and I thought it might be controversial or partisan, but it passed unanimously a resolution that calls on Congress to come up with some solution as more and more Republican-led states have been pulling out of ERIC. Virginia is of special concern, I think, to Maryland because our borders are so chorus that we are going to have less accurate voter databases because of Governor Youngkin's decision. So that was disappointing, and I think it's important. So want to reinforce, David, what you said earlier. And then the other thing I want to do is just make sure, since I'm all about transparency, and Delegate Mark Corman and I have passed so many transparency bills, I want to be transparent and early with some of my election legislation. Last year, I sponsored 8 election bills and passed a bunch of them. Want to say that, David, you in particular, but several of you offered insights. Kevin, you offered coaching and stuff, and Alisoon, McLaughlin, and others. Want to give you just a brief heads up. And if you have any thoughts, if anyone watching has any thoughts, opinions, or concerns, I am happy to hear from them. Now is the time. We're putting in our bill requests. It's a lot easier to clarify a bill request than it is to start going through an amendment process through a too short, 90-day session sometimes. So first off, I passed 50-50 cost share legislation. I think that we are going to have an emergency bill to clarify exactly what that includes, and that will be an emergency bill. It will be pre-filed, which means an early hearing, and that will be likely a MACO, Maryland Association of Counties, priority. So if anyone has thoughts as to what states should pay, what the counties should pay, what should be split, we are finalizing that. Second, we have been exploring and looking nationally to see what other states have done. David, do you want me to pause after each one, or can I run through and then take questions? Is that okay?
Go right ahead. Just keep going.
Perfect. Threats against election officials, not just election workers, but election judges. I mean, frankly, anyone associated with election day should be protected. And the question is what that should look like, how serious a threat needs to be, what's possible, what's freedom of speech versus what's a threat on social media. We've dealt with guns at the proximity of polling places, but there are other ways of intimidating people. So that is an ongoing conversation. And you may remember that a couple years ago, I amended a protect our healthcare workers who were being threatened in the middle of COVID with an amendment to include election workers. It was too close to the end of session, and there was a concern that that would kill the bill. Amending it would kill the bill to protect our healthcare workers. And so we kind of shelved that. But the numbers, the spikes are insane and concerning. And I want to make sure that all of you and everyone who works at a poll is feeling safe and feeling protected. A bill that passed the Senate unanimously died in the House, and that was updating our recount laws. We literally have old recount laws that are outdated, referring to equipment we no longer use. So it is not controversial. It is clarifying. The House just kind of ran out of time and decided they didn't want to do more election bills at some point, but planning to bring that back. Another one in that same posture was dealing with exploratory committees or draft committees. The, draft Boris for governor, and everyone can throw $1 million at him and he doesn't disclose it. He can buy a fancy.
Boris is not running against Governor Moore. I want to make that very clear. Governor Moore, if you're watching, and I know you'll tell him, Boris is not running for governor.
Okay. Boris is a little too busy to be doing that, but draft committees, exploratory committees, are completely, there are no contribution limits, there's no expenditure guidelines, there's no disclosure, no transparency. It's terrible. It's a morass of potential trouble. And so we want to create some guidelines. So you can rent an office, you can hire staff, you can buy computers and phones, you can do a poll, you can do mailings, things that one does if one is thinking about either exploring a campaign or trying to draft someone. But we do need limits. Again, that passed the Senate unanimously last year and failed to move in the House. So those are some of, but not all of the election bills. But those are 4 that I thought I would flag for you. There are other aspects, and there's several of them will be emergency bills because they really do need to apply in 2024. So with that, I'm happy to pause. I just wanted to give you an early glimpse. If my schedule allows and your schedule allows, Mr. Chairman, and you're not too jammed, I can try to come back again before session. But just in case that wasn't going to happen, I figured I would pop in today. So happy to
Thank
take
you.
questions.
And thank you for sharing your ideas with us. Are there questions for Senator Kagan?
Cool, I get off easy.
Okay. Okay.
Very impressive presentation on early voting sites. So thank you to the staff and Mr. Chairman, Kevin, and others who have already given your thoughts to me as I'm crafting legislation. Thank you for your.
Okay. We are doing our best, Senator, to make sure that your Gaithersburg constituents will not be waiting in line by pushing very hard to get that gym resurfaced in
Yeah.
time.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
and Mayor Ashman has been a great collaborator with us, and he understands its significance, and we are very grateful for that. But we're hoping that all that positivity will result in the first construction project to finish on time or early in history. But in any event, I wanted to make sure you knew that the city of Gaithersburg has been working very closely with us.
Not surprised, and I heard you say that before about the wonderful mayor, and I know that you've both Gaithersburg High School and Borough Park, and so having the backup plan and all that seems like a good idea.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
Thank you all. Take care.
Okay. So the next thing on our agenda is old business, the review of the State Board of Elections documents for new boards. Kevin.
Thank you, David. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. You should have gotten all the documents. There's a letter from Linda Lamone, memo dated June 1. Really, the highlight of that is just to remind you that on October 19, there's a mandatory meeting of all board members in Annapolis. And so please make sure that's on your calendar for you to attend that meeting on the 19th. We have the state has sent out the ethics and standards for election officials and employees. While it's helpful for you to look those over, and please ask me if you have any questions, quite frankly, our bylaws in some respects are more restrictive than what is permitted under state law. And just by way of an example, the ethics and standards permits an individual to circulate and sign petitions. The Montgomery County Board of Elections bylaws do not. While it's a nice template for you to sort of familiarize yourself with, the bylaws really are controlling in that regard, and that's really what you should look to. And I would encourage you, certainly as things become much more active, as we ramp up for the election season, if you have any questions about whether you have an ethical issue or there's a particular event that you want to attend, and whether it may be a potential problem for you to do so, please reach out to me and I will give you at least my opinion. If nothing else, you can say that you checked with the board attorney and we're given some direction on how those matters could be handled. So you have the ethics and standards. You also were given a sort of a breakdown. This is very loose and it's by statute, and there's some overlap between these things, as you will see as we reach the election season. But basically the assignment of duties between the members of the local board, the election director, and the staff, and the citations to that. And the third, of course, is your ethics summary. Obviously, you're covered by the Maryland public ethics laws, and you have to go ahead and do your disclosures every year online. And if you have any trouble, I think you should have already done that. But if you have any issues with that, please let Boris know, and he can put you in contact with the individual at the state in terms of making sure that your ethics filing is complete. And then the last thing that you have, really, you have two things. One is relates to pre and post meeting activities and notices. The most important one is that under section 1305, referring to quote, administrative policy affecting voting rights, we have certain statutory obligations with regard to providing notice if there are going to be decisions made by the board that have an impact on a voter's voting location. Really not something the board needs to worry about. That's handled by staff. And we always are mindful of the obligation to provide timely notice and an opportunity for the public to comment when there are going to be any changes in terms of polling places and things of that nature. And I think Boris is going to touch on just sort of preliminarily October's discussion on polling places, but that's also included in your packet. And the last thing that I think is of some interest to you is the summary of federal election laws that are controlling in terms of the Help America Vote Act, the National Voter Registration Act, which we talked about a little bit earlier in terms of list maintenance, and UACAVA, and some of the other federal statutes that you'll see in play. I'm not going to, we have a lengthy agenda today, so I'm not going to go through these one by one. I would just encourage you that if you have any questions after you've reviewed it, to give me a call and we can go ahead and talk about any of the documents. Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
Okay.
So the next item is bylaws, which will be a lengthier discussion.
Well, maybe, maybe not. Let's see. We've been talking about bylaws for quite some time.
That's
So,
true.
you
It's
know,
true.
on a one-on-one basis, we've had quite a few conversations about bylaws. So, I think that the way for this to work is that I will start off with a motion. And what I want to do is I want to find a way to correctly identify the document that we are working off of. But basically, I'm going to move the approval of the document that I sent you all. Okay, so I am moving the approval of the document, the first attachment to my email of the 11th of September at 8:34 p.m., which I think is, I sent it to you telling you that that's where we left off the conversation in July. You guys may remember we were scheduled to discuss the bylaws at our July 31 meeting. Diane made a request because she was not able to attend that meeting to put off that discussion until our next meeting. This is our next meeting. We now have the State Board of Elections asking where are our bylaws. So I very much would like to get it done today. So I will move the approval of the bylaws as indicated in that document. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Daniel is seconding it. Let me take a moment to just summarize some of the things that are in this document, and then I will turn it over to others.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Quick question. I have a document that's dated with your edits were made September 13th. Is that the one we're looking at?
Oh, well, you know what? Maybe I picked the wrong document. Thank you, Alex. Boy, I'm really getting careless between 2022 and 2024, and so
David?
Yes, Kevin.
Let me just see if I can help a little bit. There would have been an email, I believe you would have sent out as a reminder on September 14.
Okay. I am looking at my September 14 sent emails. Okay, I sent you a document on September 14, Kevin. But what I sent you was what I sent to the board on September 11th. So
right.
So it's the same one that I mentioned. So Alex, what do you have that has September 13th on it? Because that has me concerned.
It is bylaws adopted September 16th, 2019 with DN, which I assume refers to your good self, 9/13/2023. Not DOCX, it's a Word document.
Okay.
And
well,
I have that as well, David.
Well, okay. I want to make sure we're all working from the same document. That's the most important thing. And let me see what it was that that document is. Give me a moment. I realize that this is kind of the equivalent of watching paint dry. It is really odd that there would be bylaws that I sent that are not in my sent.
Well, the reality, David, is that I think you dated it wrong. And I don't think it was actually September 13th. I think it was actually August 13, the Word document, when we first started this conversation on
Okay.
bylaws.
Well,
Or earlier.
I will say again, I sent a document. It was a reminder on last Monday night. And well, maybe not. Hang on a second, folks. All right, I apologize. I will make sure that we are all on the same document. Just give me a moment here to make sure I'm sending you all the very same document. It has not changed since July. The only thing that's happened since July has been conversations back and forth about what it
Right.
says and
Right.
and formatting issues. So in reality, whatever document that you have, and the last one that I have one that's dated the 14th. Let me see if I have one that is dated the 13th, so we can all be looking at the same thing.
The 14th of what?
Of September of this year.
Okay.
But I may not have sent that to you all. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, no, I believe that was not sent.
Okay, because the other thing that happened, here's what happened, folks. I sent a document out on the 11th, and it appears that I attempted to recall it in order to add additional changes to it. And I'm guessing that what happened is that some of you got it and some of you didn't. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to send you now the most recent version of the document that I have so that we can continue this conversation.
Okay.
And hang on a second.
So David, is there a version subsequent to September 13th with your comments?
If it's possible, there is a version on September 14th, and I will find for you what was the last thing I said. Okay. In other words, I will find for you if there's any difference in it. And I apologize for the confusion. It has been quite an effort to try and take a document. We started off with a signed document from 4 years ago, and then we kind of worked off of that. So anyway, okay, I am hang on a moment. I am sending this to you right now. And let me explain what is in it. And then we will I will find any change that would have been. The last changes were an effort to try and fix a formatting problem that I'm still not able to fix. And then I talked to Kevin and we agreed that the formatting issue can be fixed after we approve whatever we approve because it does not affect the substance. So if there was a change on the 14th, it was my effort to deal with the with the formatting, that one of the things that Ami pointed out, I'm going to tell you where it is. There was an A where there should have been a 4, I believe. Do you remember this, Ami? And I was seeking to fix that, and it did not necessarily do the job. But let me walk through substantively how the bylaws would potentially differ from the last board's bylaws. And I'm going to give you kind of the major points. I'm going to start with one that we've talked about multiple times. That is the reporting of our political contributions. Under the prior bylaws, we were reporting contributions to or attendance at party campaign fundraisers that are not candidate specific or ballot question specific. And
David, it would help if you'd give us the section number as we go through the discussion.
Okay. My prepared notes do not do that. So let me pull those up and see, and see if I can put that together. Okay. For 4.3, hang on a second.
4.2. Got it.
Okay. 4.2 deals with our political activity. And what I'm talking about is 4.2B3, which previously included the phrase political parties, which I am proposing to delete, so that you will see that later I am inserting another sentence that explains about political parties. But the gist of it is, this provision would read: a member may attend campaign fundraisers held by candidates or ballot issue committees, provided that the member discloses this fact to the board and does not publicly indicate that at such event that he or she is a member of the board. So in other words, you could go to an event for a candidate or a ballot issue that is on the ballot. You would be required to disclose, but a political party event is not on that list. And you'll see when you look at the document, the note that I got from Kevin is that this particular revision is what was always intended. It just didn't end up that way on the last board. If you will then look down at 4.2 B8, I have added a letter C. 4.2 B8A says a member may attend central committee meetings and consult with party members. 4.2 B8B says a member shall not serve on an executive committee of the party or assume a role within the party that has decision-making authority. Those are the same as they were before. But C is a new provision. A member may attend political party or political club fundraisers or other meetings without following the requirements described in B3 above. In other words, those are allowed without doing the disclosure. The party events and the political club events. The thing that if someone is on our ballot, that is a different different issue. While we are looking at 4.3, there is a provision in 4.3 that is a difference, but is in effect not different, which is that I added language to track the statute about political activity. I realize that there is a desire to know what that means, but whatever it means, it means the same thing that it does in the state law. And the idea was to not suggest that a portion of the state law does not apply to us, because obviously state law does apply to us. And that is in 4.2 B2. the other things that I should mention that are in the bylaws, and Ami, I will do my best to give you the citations, which like I said, I did not prepare. There's a section that talks about whether the ways in which we are not allowed to show support to candidates, which and I believe that is also in 4.2, and I think it is, hang on, 4.2B6. And it previously said that we are not allowed to publicly display, and then in parentheses, it had as examples, including through yard signs, bumper stickers, or publicly comment. And I've added the phrase advertisements, online communication, or otherwise publicly comment to be broader in terms of what is included. But it is the same, essentially the same rule, slightly updated in terms of what we are not allowed to do in terms of support or opposition to any candidate or issue on the ballot for which we will be serving on the local board of canvassers. To be clear, that includes anybody on our ballot up to candidates for president of the United States. It does not include people who are not on our ballot, like people who run in other jurisdictions but not in Montgomery County. So that gives you kind of a sense of what what that particular bylaw provision says.
David, really quickly, what was
yes.
that specific one again? My screen blacked out and I'm having trouble navigating back.
Okay, this
The very last one, sorry.
4.2B6.
Thank you.
And like I said, it is not a change from what we had in the past. It is just adding the words advertisements, online communication, or otherwise publicly comment. We already were prohibited from publicly commenting or publicly displaying or showing support. So it is not a substantive.
Okay.
It is not a substantive change. The bylaws used to include, and I'm going to have to look to find the provision, but it used to say the day and time of our meetings. We had a discussion that was about the benefit of having regular meeting times, which I completely support. But I don't think there's a need to have a bylaws amendment in order to change our meeting time. So the idea is that instead of saying we're going to meet at a certain time on a certain day of the month, it says that we are going to meet every month at a date and time determined by the president after consultation with the secretary and the election director. In reality, we need a quorum at every meeting. I'm going to be consulting with all of you anytime we schedule a meeting, because obviously we can't have a meeting if we don't have a quorum there. My every expectation is that we are going to continue on the pattern that we are now, which is the third Monday of the month, except when there is a holiday that prevents that, in which case we move to either the second or the fourth Monday of the month. But we will try and establish those things far in advance so that board members, the public, the staff, everyone will be up to date. But the provision in the bylaws doesn't really accomplish notice of any kind. So it will no longer, I'm sorry, someone trying to speak.
Well, I was just saying, David, you're referring to 3.1A, correct?
I believe that is correct, but let me just double check that. Yes, I am referring to 3.1A. Daniel.
Yes, so going back to section 4.2B6.
Yes.
Just to make sure there are no variability. So when you refer the addition of online communication, as you know, we're in a social media world now, right? So
yes, we are.
Does that encompasses social media? And if it does like a retweet or like, are there a difference between the two? So if you can just shed some light for us board members, but more importantly, we don't want the public to say, oh, Daniel liked that, that tweet, or Daniel liked that social media post. So if you can shed some light on that, or if it doesn't cover social media, then just let us know.
It definitely does. Social media communications that show support of a candidate or a ballot question that is on the ballot in Montgomery County that we will be counting is something that this rule, with or without the additional communication, with or without the additional language that I am proposing, would cover that, because that is a form of public comment. So now you're asking a more specific question about what does a retweet or a like, or in some cases there are choices between retweet, like, love, applaud, etc. And I will tell you the not so helpful advice that I would give, which is anything that you do that shows approval of a candidate who's on our ballot is subject to criticism. And there are lots of examples where there has been criticism of even private conversations that are overheard by people. So, but I'm not the arbiter of what that is. And I would potentially be asking this question of our board counsel as to whether, those things can be considered support. I do realize that there are a number of people, I don't know whether you're one of them, Daniel, who have some version of a disclaimer that says retweeting does not include support. But I think that would be very much up for interpretation, because is that a form of public comment on someone who's on our ballot if that person is a candidate, or if it is about a ballot question that is on our ballot, or if it's about a ballot question that's about to be on our ballot? Kevin, do you have any thoughts on how to handle that situation?
Well, I'm inclined to agree with you, David. I think anything you do that would be construed as showing support for a particular candidate is problematic, and you should stay away from it. Now, you may retweet something that's just like a community event. That wouldn't necessarily be showing support for the candidate. It would be showing support for a particular event.
If the candidate doesn't sponsor the event.
Right. So, I think it really kind of does depend upon, what you're retweeting or liking. But I think as a general rule, I mean, obviously the criticism would be anytime that a board member shows something that can be construed as support for a particular candidate that's on our ballot, you're opening yourself up to some potential criticism for that. Whether it's fair or unfair, you are opening yourself up to that potential criticism.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I do believe I brought this to the attention of the board when we first introduced this topic of social media. And at the time, it was due to the fact that members on both sides of the aisles share information regarding community services, information that does help the many and not the few. And so in respect of that, that is why I brought this up. Now, I'll speak for myself. I do have a disclaimer on my social media long before I was on the board that retweets and shares and likes do not indicate support of any particular candidate. That being said, I will speak candidly for a moment. I have supported when people have had children, not meaning anything about supporting the candidates. I've also shared information about local events. Now, while today may not be the opportunity for us to dive deep on this, I do think very strongly about having conversations around the nuance of social media, because especially when it comes to community engagement and civic engagement, there are people on both sides of the aisles who are sharing that information in a nonpartisan way. And I'd like to make sure that we're thinking about the respect of people who are trying to reach, regardless of what party they're with. So again, this may not be the exact moment to get into a very nuanced conversation, but it is worth considering since we are in a very new age and we're going to be very much stuck in this age for quite some time. So it would be us to make sure that we are being very clear about this. In the meantime, because I also believe in sharing some type of solution, I think that if someone is able to share the disclaimer on their social media, that is at least a stop go, if you will, to just make sure people are clear about what it means for now. So
Let
Kevin,
me,
I'd love your thoughts on that as well.
But before we get back to Kevin, let me ask a question of the entire board. And thank you, Kina, for those very, very thoughtful comments. Here's what the provision says. A member shall not publicly display, including through yard signs, bumper stickers, advertisements, online communication, or otherwise publicly comment or show support for or opposition to any candidate or issue on the ballot in an election for which the member will be serving on the local board of canvassers. So the standard is support for or opposition to any candidate or issue on the ballot that we count. And let me clarify, because the question was asked of me, if I make a comment about the Republican primary for CD6, where I don't live in CD6 and I'm not a Republican, that is still potentially support for or opposition to a candidate who is on a ballot that I'll be counting the ballots for. So I guess my question for you all is, I think you've raised a number of nuances that probably requires Kevin to do some research, because we are not the first people to encounter this. The federal government has very strict rules relating to the Hatch Act and social media. They've gone through all this. But is there anybody here who thinks that you should be able to communicate public support for or opposition to a candidate or issue on a ballot that we count? Because if you don't, I think that this language would probably be okay for you. And then it's a question of how we interpret it that I think our board counsel can work with us on, rather than, because we're definitely not going to just, decide. There's too many of us with too many intelligent opinions for us to come up with the perfect solution this afternoon. So my question is, does the language in the bylaws that I'm, with the change that I propose, need to be adjusted? That's my question.
Mr. President, so I think in the scenarios that we're discussing right now, and thank you, Kina, for bringing that up, I feel like it's not necessarily our understanding of the language, but it's the misinterpretation of a like or a retweet from the public. That's basically what I think it's good that we have clarity on, because it may not be, I don't think any, let me speak for myself. I wouldn't share or like or anything that relates to a campaign that a candidate is doing, regardless if they're, Democrat or Republican. But as we all know, there are relationships that, we have with people who are in elected offices, right? So, for example, if somebody had a baby and, or somebody is celebrating their child's 18th year birthday, right? If I comment on that, I don't want anyone to come back and say, "Oh, Daniel comment on so and so's."
Okay, but I think you're picking the easy case. Okay, because I think it's I think that it'll be very hard for someone to say that commenting on the birth of a child is expressing support or opposition to a candidate or issue on the ballot. But if you like something that they say about a public policy issue, and let's say hypothetically that it is said on an elected official's social media, but not on their campaign social media. So they are an elected official and you like it. Is that support or opposition to a candidate on the ballot? That strikes me as being something that requires much more work than we're going to establish this afternoon.
Sure.
I don't think that we can say that it is or that it isn't. I can tell you that, there have been lots of instances of people complaining about much less. Okay, so a rule that says that you can't like them on social media may actually be great protection for members of the board, because when someone says, why didn't you like it? The answer is because you have these strict rules because you're counting their votes. And I would be very nervous about a rule that said that you can like their, their posts about public policy issues while the campaign is going on. And I realized that figuring out what's a public policy issue may also have some complications, so um, Alex and then Kevin.
Well, Mr. President, let me say this. I think, look, we've all decided to become board members and we sought this opportunity to serve in this way. And I think the best course is to let's not see how close to the line we can come. There are certain things we're going to have to give up as board members, and this may be one of them. I think that's the best and the safest way to go. Thank you.
Kevin.
I was just going to say, I'd like to do some research on it, and if I could trouble Keena to have a cup of coffee with me, maybe we could talk about some of the retweets and likes and other things, so that I kind of get a better feel for the areas where you would have some questions and concerns, and perhaps we can share that with the board at next month's meeting to sort of round out a little bit more of our sort of the understanding of where it would be clearly a sort of a community engagement issue, which is not really support for and against a candidate. And perhaps that would provide some level of comfort moving forward. And I'm just candidly, I'm not a big social media person. So, I'd like to actually sit down with you and, have you walk me through a couple of examples of, things where you say, well, I wouldn't think that this is support for or against a candidate, and go from there.
Absolutely, sir. I'm happy to help.
I will tell you from experience, Kevin, that Keena is an excellent coffee partner. So you should definitely take advantage of that situation. I would like to ask, let me say for the record that all of you are excellent coffee partners. I just happened to have coffee with Keena quite recently. My question remains, do people have concerns about the language, or is it merely about the interpretation? If it is merely about the interpretation, I think we can approve the language, and Keena will work with Kevin, and we'll go from there. If you think that the language goes too far, then let's talk about that. Ami.
Yeah, unmute myself. I guess I'm fine with the language as you propose. I think the point should be to make the bylaw as general as it can possibly be. If you start getting into specifics, we're going to end up with a 20-page set of bylaws, which I don't think we need. And
Thank
so
you.
I'm
Yes.
I'm arguing against being overly specific.
Okay. Are people comfortable with the language as it is? Does anybody have a motion to change the language? Okay, let me move on to make sure that there weren't other okay, one other important thing. The bylaws now clarify that we can meet either in person or virtually, unless we determine to have a meeting that is exclusively one way or the other. It used to be that in order to participate virtually, that was considered to be an unusual activity. Now I have to figure out where that is in this document. And give me a moment here. Okay, I believe we are, it's under participation in meetings, which is 3.2B. And then if you look at 3.2, and this is where we had our numbering issues. but 3.2B5, I believe, is that you can participate by phone or video conferencing, and that we could end up with exclusively in person or by video conferencing. I will tell you that it's not my intention to do that until the board has had a thorough discussion as to how to do that. At the moment, we are meeting virtually, and that seems to work for everybody. But it is no longer the case that you need permission of the, to participate virtually. That's just, an antiquated rule at this point. And then the other thing that I changed that has been an anachronism since it's been in our bylaws, I believe the state put it in the bylaws. The bylaws refer to semi-annual evaluations of the director by the board and semi-annual evaluations of the staff by the director. We don't do that. We do annual. We've changed it to say annual, which hopefully is not controversial because we've never done semi-annual. That is in the model bylaws of the state. I don't know whether the state does it differently in other jurisdictions, but we've never done that here. Any other questions, comments, proposals relating to the bylaws? Alex?
Mr. President, there is, I think it's footnote 9 on page 13, which is a footnote to section 5.1A.
Hang on a second. Let me find footnote 9, if I can. I have a footnote. Well, my footnote 9 might not be your footnote 9. You're saying that footnote 9 relates to what?
Section 5.1A, it cites to this document called the Assignment of Local Board of Elections Duties to Members of the Local Board, the Election Director,
Right.
and
Yes.
I think it would be helpful to have a link to that document, or maybe since it's a table, to insert it in there, or somehow make sure that everybody knows what it is exactly we're referring to.
Yes.
I mean, they change from time to time, but I
Yes.
just thought being
I
a
think
little bit precise on that would be helpful.
I think that's an excellent idea. Kevin, that's one of the documents that the state sent us that you referred to earlier, I believe.
It is. I'm looking at it right now.
Okay. So let's just, by unanimous consent, we will insert a link to that document. If for some reason a link is not possible, we will add it to the as an addendum to the document. Okay. Anything else about the bylaws? Okay, then we'll go to a vote on the motion as I made it, as seconded by Daniel. All those in favor?
Wait, I guess, shoot, are we commenting on all the specific sections? Because I have held.
You can, if you like to comment, Diane, this is your last opportunity before we vote.
Okay.
Knowing that I knew you had a need to leave today, so this is really
I know.
This is really you're at the 12th hour. But go
Couple
ahead.
minutes, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to clarify when it comes to the date and time of meetings. I'm still troubled by the fact that I'm uncertain how the year is going to roll when, for the first 4 years on the board, I only missed the second last meeting because of a funeral. I know things have changed a little bit, but it is so helpful to know that we are planning the third Monday.
We are not
months and months in advance.
We are not. First of all, I'm a believer in planning far in advance for these meetings because it assists me with juggling with my other responsibilities, my day job, etc. So you have an ally in me, and I think that my attendance record is roughly like yours. I don't remember if I've missed anything. I don't think I have, but I've come close, and I've certainly been late on occasion. But whatever the case, my expectation is that we will continue on the third Mondays of the month when that is possible. We will not be meeting on the third Monday of January, February, or June because those are, I don't remember whether Juneteenth is actually on the third Monday in June or whether Juneteenth is on June 19th. But whatever the case, we're not going to meet on federal holidays.
Right.
You know, and if and aside from that, ordinarily we're going to meet on the third Monday of the month, and on a different Monday when we have those federal holidays. But we have had occasions when we've done differently, and I'll give you an example. Sometimes we have not met on the third Monday um, in November, um, because of how it might line up with Thanksgiving, or how it might line up with the certification of the vote and the canvass. If we're canvassing every darn day in November after the election, we might not want to have a board meeting on the third Monday of November. We might have a canvass meeting, or we might want to have a day off. So that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. It'll be a pretty unusual circumstance when we're not meeting on the third Monday of the month. We will do it
Okay.
with as much advance notice as possible.
Okay.
You'll notice from our past experience, and we all lived through 2022, when it seemed like we were meeting all the time, doing redistricting, and then doing it again when the courts changed it, and then doing a canvass, doing a recount. It just seemed like we met all the time in 2022. Nothing in the bylaws changed what we did. We met when we needed to.
Right.
And I don't expect that to change, except that I expect it to be less often than it was in 2022, because we don't have redistricting.
Okay.
But my expectation is that we are going to set a schedule early in the year. The only reason why I wouldn't say automatically at the January in the year is because we took office in June. But we're going to plan far ahead, and obviously, I mean, again, we can't meet without a quorum.
Right. No,
So I'm going to try my best to accommodate all of your schedules.
okay. No, I appreciate that. That doesn't change my my angst, in that I really still, with everything you've said, and maybe because of the way you said it, think that it would work to still keep it as the third Thursday. I mean, I'm sorry, the third Monday.
But you remember what Ami just said about making it too long. If it's the third Monday, then we have to write something in for January, for February.
No,
for,
but I like your
you know,
exception. And I'm not going to belabor this. I've said what I voiced my concern.
All right,
and
let me ask.
If
let-
it's
let-
my personal proclivity, I'm just going to have to live with it.
Let me ask the other members of the board. I mean, do folks want to have a provision that says that we ordinarily meet on the third Monday? I would be changing it from 2:30 to 3 o'clock.
And I'm cool with that.
Right, but do folks want to? I mean, basically, it has to have an escape clause, so it's not going to. I would be doing it to try and relieve your angst, but
I mean, if I'm the only one who's got an issue with this, then the board should, the majority should prevail. I don't want.
but on the other hand, it may be that others have a similar concern, or that I'm looking for the provision so that I can.
It's 4.2B2.
All right, hang on a second.
Oh, wait.
No, it's not.
No, it's down at 3.1A.
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 And Mr. President, if it helps, I did play around with creating some alternative language that might accomplish what you were just talking about.
Go ahead, Alex.
Unless circumstances dictate otherwise, the board shall meet on the third Monday of the month at a time to be determined by the president after consultation with the secretary and the election director. If the third Monday falls on a public holiday, the meeting shall be held on the following Monday. The board shall not be required to hold a regular meeting if on the third Monday of the month, the board members are already scheduled to meet as the Board of Canvassers.
I think that's, I agree with it as a matter of policy. I think it's really detailed for bylaws. But the only other thing that causes me concern is that there are going to be times when, instead of meeting the fourth Monday, for example, we frequently don't meet in December. We frequently, and the fourth Monday to go from
You mean the third?
No, let me tell you, we usually don't meet in December,
Right,
or we frequently don't meet in December. And the time period from the third Monday in November and the fourth Monday in January,
okay,
because the
got it.
third Monday in January is MLK Day. That's a long time period. And I don't know that I would want to be locked in to the idea that we automatically meet on the fourth Monday if it turns out that there's a reason to meet earlier. Sometimes the filing deadline has been in January. I don't know whether that's still true, but I'm just saying that
Mr. President,
that's the concern with locking ourselves in. Ami.
why don't we simply change it to say, unless circumstances dictate otherwise, the board shall generally meet on the third Monday of every month? And if you want to say 3 p.m., that's fine with me. I don't much care about that. But then just leave it at that.
All right, let me,
Yeah, that's a pretty big escape clause.
it's been there for your entire
No,
term
I'm
on the
saying
board and mine.
No, I'm saying it's a good escape clause.
Yeah,
I'm hoping, I'm
okay.
trying to convince you that, come
Okay.
on,
I mean, the word,
let's
yeah,
keep it
the
on the
word,
third Monday.
the word generally makes it
Okay,
more or less
so let me see,
established.
let me see if I can get this right, and something that others are on board for. And I haven't had a chance to survey everyone yet, but I'm going to try and see if I can come up with this. And actually, why don't I share my screen if I remember how? And that way we can all look at it. Let me just find the right one to share. I believe this is it. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Okay, so I need to go up. And that's interesting. Let me see if it's
No, you've got, well,
it's
okay.
not letting me edit while it's screen shares for reasons I do not understand. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm just going to come up with language. So I apologize for that.
Well, you were stuck in the footer.
No, I wasn't actually.
Oh, it looked like you were.
I know it did, but I don't believe so. But I'm going to try and come up with. It's going to be very close to what Ami said. Just give me a second here. Unless circumstances dictate otherwise, the board shall generally meet every month, and then I am going to restore on the third Monday of the month. I'm going to reject that deletion, and then I'm going to say at a time determined by the president after consultation with the secretary and the election director.
Fine.
Diane, does that work for you?
Yes, indeed. I'm trying to track along.
Okay, and then
Just read it one
obviously,
more. Yeah,
I'll be happy to read it one more time. I'll even make another effort at sharing and see if it works. How about that?
that'd be great.
I have to say that I use so many different, I use Zoom, I use WebEx, I use Teams. They're all slightly different.
Yeah.
All right, let's see if this does it. Can you see that?
Yes. It takes a magnifying glass, but I
Oh,
can
I
see.
like that. I'm very happy.
Okay. I'm going to try and make it larger if I
I
can.
mean, I'm one voice, but I'm very happy with it.
You are one voice, Diane, but you are a voice. So we do want to hear everybody. Daniel and Kina, anything to say about this?
Not on my side. I think the more flexibility we have, the more we're able to accommodate not only each other, but also like the fact that the public will also be aware before.
Right. I think it's important to have the stability for the public as well as for ourselves.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I have not amplified, and that
Okay.
is, that was always been a chief concern. Nope, I'm done.
Okay.
So,
I still
David,
find, yes,
David,
Kevin.
just a reminder, when you all vote on the bylaws, everyone votes on it, regular and substitute members,
Oh,
so.
thank you.
Ah,
thank
good.
you.
Didn't know
Thank
that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for that reminder. And that also means,
So
Alex
Margie,
and Margie, get ready. Because I highly suspect that, that this vote is coming pretty soon.
Call the
Um,
question.
There is no such thing, unfortunately, as the ability of one member to end debate. But I don't think there's a need, because I don't think we have anybody else who has indicated a desire to speak. Is there anybody else who has a desire to speak at this point? We were on the verge of voting before Diane came up with this last issue, but we managed to solve it. So that I'm happy about that. I'm fine with, as you know, unless circumstance dictate, and we will deal with that. So the question is on the entirety of the bylaws as amended, as we've discussed today. All those in favor, including substitute members, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. Okay, Kevin, I will send you the document that I have on my computer, and you can share that with Brenda.
I would do so.
And then we
well
will,
done, David.
yes, well, thank you. And Diane, we're not quite at the time that you said, but we managed to come close. I believe it is now time for the director's report. He has been waiting very patiently. And thank you for that, Boris. Why don't you go ahead?
Thank you, David. I'll go through the director's report that was shared with the board members and posted on our website on Thursday. The first notice about the distribution of materials, the draft minutes from July 31st meeting were shared with the board on September 4th. Just like the agenda was for today's meeting was posted on the website. Director's report and all the materials that follow that report in preparation for today's meeting were shared with the board and published on the website on 14th of September. The action items from the previous board meeting, I have to start by saying that there is one action item that's not addressed on today's report. I spoke with David and Alex as a proponent, and they kindly agreed the action item from the last board meeting submitted by Alex, which called for more detailed explanation of the budget lines to be presented at the October meeting. One of the reasons for that I will touch upon, and we get to the personnel updates, and that will explain why I asked for this accommodation for us to give us additional time to produce a proper document as requested by the board members. The other action items, which is outreach calendar, is a standing item that was shared with the board and it's available on our website. Also, there was a request about outreach events and the total hours that we spent for those events in a year. If you look at the table, the chart that is included in the director's report, we cover period from fiscal year June from June 21 to December 21, the whole 22, and the up to date of 23. We included number of total events, total staff engagement, and outreach hours that took us for organizing those events. Information about posting of the ad for the election aid 2 temporary positions that was communicated with the board members on August 8th as the ad became available and posted on the county website. Then the next one was the question about the transition of future vote alumni from future vote into the election worker, election judges. The number that we got from research that we conducted here is 944 for the period from 2016 elections to 2022. And the last action item was the Future Vote Program demographic breakdown of participants for 2018 and 2022. If I recall properly, David, the presentation included total from since the project started. The request was to bring provide a more detailed breakdown for the last two cycles that we engaged, and those demographic statistics are presented in the report. Just like every other month, voter registration statistics are shared with the board on the first of each calendar month. On the September 1st, we provided statistics for the August of 2023, which indicated there were a bit over 680,000 registered active voters in Montgomery County, with 62,450 inactive, for the total of 742,806 voters on the rolls. Very briefly about State Board of Elections, that Jared Damaris has officially taken the post as the state election administrator on September 1. Catherine Berry, the former election director for Carroll County, has been appointed as the new deputy administrator of elections as of September 6th. I have previously communicated with the board that a long-awaited decision by the state administrator about the use of new voting or new poll books for the 2022 elections was made, and decision was to postpone introduction of the new poll books and to use the legacy products that we have in our warehouse. So my understanding is that the new poll books should be used in 2026. Personnel. I believe almost every director's report I touched upon our effort to hire or issues we had with the reasons why we needed to re-advertise. Our human resources liaison is now working much closely with the Office of Human Resources to expand the reach of our vacancies. County's office is, as I indicated here, utilizing a new network called Handshake that is targeting students and alumni of the higher education institutions that are available. Even though the candidates are reached out through the platform, they still need to apply through the county website to be on the eligible list. But I believe any effort to expand the reach to increase that would increase the pool and increase the number of candidates that apply for the position is always welcome. On August 28th, Mr. Xiri Zinda joined our team as the new IT Tech 3. And you have already seen on the screen Mr. Thomas Williams, that we all know as Chuck, has joined our team as a new administrative specialist 2 for finance. And his new appointment was the reason why I asked for a postponement of action item related to the detailed budget explanation. I believe that Mr. Williams would need just some time to look at this issue, especially knowing that we were assigned a new budget analyst with the OMB. So I believe that we will have document ready for October board meeting. We have started the process to onboard the IT2 tech members that were hired, and the ad for hiring of 2 service coordinators within the water services has closed on September 4, and I believe that we should start interviews this week or early next week. The ad for program manager 2 water services, my old position, should go up today. I thought Amy was asking a question. I apologize.
No, I was not. I apologize if I looked like I was.
No, it's not a problem at all. So the job ad for my former job, what services manager, should go up this week, and it will be advertised for 3 weeks period. When it comes to the temporary positions, this state board decision on the poll books has a kind of domino effect on our return of the temporary IT staff. They will rejoin us, I believe, next week, but because we will have to do the legacy, to look at the poll books and the re-uploading the softwares that were removed in preparation of the new poll books to be deployed. The staff, our liaison with the HR, is working on our participation on October 3rd job fair that the county is organizing. For us, it will be an opportunity to meet potential applicants for the number of temporary positions that we will have in the building, but also we will have a separate table because we will do it as an outreach event for registration and election workers hiring. And going forward, all the jobs that are with the Board of Elections, we should have a landing page on our main website for anyone who is interested, who just visits our stuff. Our website can pick up and apply. We will have a number of flyers that will be created about election aid positions, which are temporary positions, and we will have quite a few hirings for those. The flyers will have a QR code, and the QR codes will take all the interested candidates to our website. We shared the budget document. As I said, it's in the format that was used previously. We will adjust that format going forward. There were no expenditures in the reporting period that were out ordinary or something that was not expected for this time of the year. When it comes to the section activities, water services, water registration in particular, continues its job its work on the list maintenance, where we are processing different records provided from different sources, either individually or through ERIC or a jury commission. The water services team also took part in the refresher trainings organized by the State Board of Elections. The last one was organized in Washington County. The one before was in July 26 in Anne Arundel. As I mentioned earlier, the IT staff is preparing the materials required to begin reinstallation of the software on the legacy poll books that we will utilize in 2024. The IT manager is still working with the TABS, Technology and Enterprise Business Solutions department, on the replacement election work and future vote portal. The design, the software design phase has been completed, and the software development phase now is in the process. And I believe this is where I hit my limits of my IT knowledge. Any questions will have to be directed to Janet. Operations, I apologize for that. Operations section, as been presented today, the main focus of the operations work in the last period was on preparation of the survey, preparation of presentation, and related to early voting sites. The next one is coming up is polling places and the drop boxes. Recruitment and election support, continuing processing the applications and supporting outreach when needed. When it comes to the meetings, as mentioned previously, I appear before the Election Assistance Commission on August 2nd, together with the state election administrator for the state of Delaware and a colleague from one of the counties in Georgia. Discussion was focused mainly on the voter engagement and education. successes, challenges, how to engage diverse communities, what the partnerships are, how do we assess good or bad partnership, election workers recruitment and training. These were all just issues that each one of us touched upon separately, answering the questions from the commissioners in the course of this panel. On August 15, Mr. Karpinski and I met with Mr. Fletcher, as it was announced previously, to discuss a number of issues that Mr. Fletcher raised in his public comments and before the board, especially related to data that was collected either by Mr. Fletcher or presented by him. The discussion was very professional and touched upon a number of issues, and Eric was one of them. There were a few questions that we could answer, few questions that were state responsibility. We kindly asked Mr. Fletcher to reach out directly to the state, because the counties are not parts of the ERIC. The states are signatories to the ERIC itself. On August 15 as well, Janet Millicent, the newly appointed member of the Maryland State Board of Elections, visited the office. Board president was here as well. We had a conversation about upcoming 2024 elections, answer the questions that we could. The focus, quite a bit of conversation focused on the automation of receiving mail-in ballots, basically the sorting machine, and the solutions, how to improve the process compared to 2022. And the last meeting that was held, it was August 28th, where the board president, board secretary, and myself met with the leadership of Montgomery County Students for Change group. I believe that the meeting came around as their interest, due to their interest in lowering the voting age in the county from 18 to 16, not just registration, but the voting. We discussed different technical issues that change would bring about for the process itself. I think that we answered quite a few questions, and board president, board secretary invited the group to join us, to work with us and become election judges. And if I remember properly, the president of the group has already served as election judge at the 2022. When it comes to the upcoming events, as Kevin reminded the board already, biennial meeting is on October 19th. You have received the draft agenda that Lisa has sent, I believe, 2 days ago. So we will just need a reply for you about the logistics of the event. And I just received the invitation to join the League of Women Voters of Montgomery County at their open house date on October 29th. That will be director's report for this board meeting.
Okay, other questions for Boris? Boris, I do have a question, but I'm not sure if it belongs in this conversation or in the outreach conversation that we're having later. But in fact, maybe I'll put it in the outreach conversation. I find the future vote statistics to be very interesting. And I think that it's definitely worthy of conversation, but why don't we save that for the outreach conversation? Because and I do appreciate the information, as well as the answer to Keena's very important question about how many future voters have become judges, which I think is a lot, which is obviously very important to us. Any other questions about the director's report? I thought that Chuck was going to take a bow, but given that he's off camera, it's hard for me to point out all of the great things he did before I found out that he was a financial maven in addition to his other talents. But perhaps he's a little camera shy.
Chuck had to step out for a moment, so I apologize for that.
Okay, no worries. I just wanted to say that I know of his experience working with us in a variety of capacities in temporary work, and I am thrilled that you were able to hire him to work on our permanent staff. So welcome to Chuck. Kina.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Boris, very much for the director's report. It was amazing. And thank you for answering my questions regarding the data about attrition. On the same topic about attrition, I was wondering if there's information that you're using to, or rather are using the data to help inform decisions about recruitment from different high schools, different middle schools, and what does that look like? So for instance, if you were noticing that there was a higher number of future votes or alumni voters coming from the northwest part of the county, are you then repurposing your efforts towards other parts of the county, just so there's a lot more representation available to this program?
We certainly do. There's also, in addition to our outreach effort, our effort through outreach to balance geographic participation of students in future vote program. I believe that's what you are referring to. It's there, we do it. However, the sign up is something that's individual activity. And there is a tendency that more signups come from certain areas of the county than others. That's how I understand. So it's work in progress, and we would like to see equal distribution, as you rightly point out, but it's work in progress.
All things being said, I'm very confident in the work of you and the staff members to find that equality, obviously. If there's anything that we can do as board members to aid in that distribution of raising the numbers in all parts of the county, please let us know. I'm very much interested in this work, as many of you are aware of.
Absolutely.
And since Kina talked about geographic distribution, I guess my question kind of follows hers better now than later. The data from Future Vote, the data in the cumulative information that we had in Dr. Zelaya's presentation in July suggested that 12% of future voters were Latino. And the data from the most recent years of early voting that are in the director's report from 2018 and 2022 has essentially 7%. And the African American percentage is at roughly 14. I am not, I want to make that clear, not suggesting that we have a quota for Future Vote, but I am curious as to what we can do to increase our outreach. Latinos are 20% of the Montgomery County population. African Americans, I think, are roughly, I have to get the data, but
19.
I'm sorry, 19?
Yeah,
okay.
something like that.
Yeah, I knew it was roughly the same. I have the data. I'm gonna pull it up. But I'm very interested in what we can do. You know, if there is a tendency towards certain geographic areas or certain ethnicities to sign up for our programs, that's, you know, it's good that we have people signing up, and it's good that, you know, but we should be working on what we can do to reach out to any of the groups that are underrepresented, whether they are up-county residents, whether they are a specific political affiliation, or whether they are an ethnic group. The thing about the Latino students in particular is our great need for Spanish-speaking judges. And so I hope that we are going to, do what we can to reach out to those groups. I just pulled up the census data. Oh, this is from 2010, so that's a little. No, it's not. It's from 2020. Black percentage is 21%, and the Latino percentage is 20%. So I hope that we will be doing what we can to, and I know that Gilberto indicated when we met in July that he is particularly focused on certain areas of the county, et cetera. I just hope that we'll be creative about ways that we can improve that outreach.
Absolutely. If I could just may add, so creativity is needed. I think the continuity of engagement is needed. What we should have going forward is the separately assigned contact point within the MCPS that should work with Gilberto to amplify this outreach towards these particular communities. So far, it was kind of channeled through one individual. It will be split, hopefully, going forward, which would make it more detailed, I would say, hands-on available for us to engage to what the MCPS have as an opportunity to reach out to all of these kids from different demographic groups.
I think that's very important. And I will say, as a, kind of a student government alumnus, that it shouldn't all go through student government, that there should be a variety of different pathways to get to students so that everybody feels welcome. As of course, we know that everybody is welcome. We know that that is the view of every board member and every staff member. We just want to make sure that folks know what, what's available to them.
I fully agree. I believe that the board and the staff are on the same page when it comes to the general message that everyone is welcome, to the general message that we will do what's possible to increase this number. And any ideas that we would get from the kids, from our experience, from the newly appointed person with the MCPS, from the board, from NVAR, it's always welcome.
Okay, Ami, and then Margie.
Yeah, Mr. President, are we going to have more of the outreach discussion now, or are we going to have it a little later when we reach that point in the agenda? Because I have some outreach comments I'd like to make.
Why don't you go ahead?
Okay.
I mean, because I think that there's little purpose in our, bouncing back and forth. So why don't you just go ahead?
Okay. No, my issue with outreach was when we had our discussion in July, I was asked to provide some specific content and contact information for the political areas that have been, to my belief, pretty well ignored in pursuing outreach in our county. And specifically, I was asked to provide the names and contact information for the chairs of the Republican women's clubs. And this was not followed up on, and I am somewhat dismayed by that fact. Can you tell me why it wasn't followed up on, and what can we do? I look at the events and the outreach data that has been provided, and it's very clear that what are the more conservative parts of the county are being quite ignored. And the conservative groups that I have, the more conservative groups that I've provided contacts for have also been ignored. And I don't know how to fix this.
I think that you already provided a great suggestion, Ami. The discussion took place at the board meeting July 31st. And if I remember correctly, immediately day after or 2 days after, you did provide a list of 4 or 5 clubs within the Republican Party at the county level. And Dr. Gilberto Zala did reach out to these clubs. But you rightly recognize that he reached out by sending an email to the, basically respecting the central committee structure, reaching out to the chairman, to the secretary, and then to the board club presidents. The email was followed earlier this month, and I believe that you pointed rightly that maybe just reaching out through the party structure, we should have reached out directly to the board club presidents, as you indicated in your email. This is exactly what Gilberto will do.
Okay. I mean, you need to know that the clubs do not report to the party structure. They have officially no connection to the party structure. They are quite independent of the central committee. Perhaps I didn't make that clear enough in my discussion in July, and if so, that's on me, and I'll take that one on. But specifically, you don't get to them via the central committee.
Let me say, I want to say something about that. I don't think it's on you, Ami. I think that when board members make suggestions, before staff decides that they have a better idea how to deal with the political parties that we've spent our lives in, you might want to consult with us, because you'd have the same issue if I gave you a list of clubs in the Democratic Party, and the response was to go to the chair of the Democratic Central Committee. That would be horribly offensive to those clubs. You know, they don't take orders. This is, you know, this is not machine politics of Chicago of the past, right? This is, you know, this is Montgomery County, where everybody has their own independent opinion and they do things on their own. But and more so, I've been Johnny One Note about taking advantage of the knowledge of the people on our board. And the people on our board have experience with these organizations. So if you say to us, give me the contact information, and we give you the contact information, use the information we give you, or come back to us and say, should I go through the party chair or should I not? You know, I don't know the chairs of the, or at least I don't believe I do, the chairs of the groups that Ami spoke to. But the idea of asking a man instead of asking these 5 women does not strike me as being a good start to our outreach to these 5 women. So I would hope that we would coordinate better in the future.
As I said, we sent out 2 emails that were directed to the chair. I agree, and to the secretary, and to the leaders of the groups that Ami mentioned. But I think that staff did take Ami's suggestions seriously, so we are reaching out to these groups directly. In meanwhile, I think that we just confirmed meeting with the Leisure World Republican Club and the Moms from Liberty. I think that we will be attending the event in October, and I'm sorry, date escapes me at this particular moment.
You're muted, Ami. Although I think I know what you said.
No, I was just saying that's fine. Thank you for proceeding. I do think that if you look at the data, most of the outreach has been in the more democratic areas of the county, and it would behoove us, if we want to broaden our participation, to go to the more more conservative groups and areas.
And Ami, I would say that what you're saying is not that different than what Kino was saying, because we're talking about geographic diversity as well as other types of diversity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, in those geographic areas, there are Democrats, Republicans, and independents. But as I understood the presentation from July 31st, part of the issue is that what we generally do is we go to the events that exist. And there are more events in the down county area than in the up county area, to which my reaction is, then let's create some events. You know, let's have a Board of Elections visit to the Germantown Library, Now I realize we're probably sitting in the Germantown Library lobby and asking for election judges, but let's create, I would, what I would say is let's create events if
Well-
if the events don't already exist.
You know, for example, there was Poolsville Day not too long ago, and there was no Board of Elections presence there. There was no effort to register people or recruit judges there. There are some events like that that should be on your calendar, in my view.
I mean, if you let me, I would like to look at that statement about Poolsville, because I'm pretty sure that I approved the payment for the registration to use the space and have the tables out. So thank you for
Okay.
bringing it up. I'll follow up on that one.
No, follow up on it. I may be wrong because I wasn't physically there this
Okay.
year. But I did not see that on the list that was provided to us.
It's fair enough. I cannot. I think none of us takes all those listings from the
Yeah.
different street events too seriously. That every table is captured properly, but I'm pretty sure that we did receive and process the payment to have a table set up for the Poolsville.
Okay.
Okay, I know we're getting close to 6 o'clock. I have one other outreach related question for you, Boris.
Please.
And then I know we want to keep moving, but could you give us a status report on what you are doing relative to the I want to say this the right way, the users of X, formerly known as Twitter, who the board is following. I'm not talking about who follows us. I'm talking about who we're following.
Oh, okay. If this would be the outreach portion,
I think we're just there because
I think we have arrived without
yes,
necessarily realizing.
I think we are.
That's fair enough. I did wanted to say a few things about outreach and what we are doing with this. Whom we follow, who follows us on the platform, social platform X, previously known as Twitter. I just wanted to say a few words to the board. My understanding is that Board of Election joined Twitter at that time in 2013. Ever since, we have different team members who held the role of administrator of that Board of Elections account with the Twitter, currently X platform. And it was correct statement from the last board meeting made by the president that we never established an official policy that would structure whom we follow on Twitter, currently X, and in which manner. So I took it as something that board is interested. I'm certainly interested to have it structured in a way so we all know where are we coming from, whom will we follow and why. I did reach out to Mr. Karpinski and we had a few initial conversations on this issue. I would hope that by the next board meeting, we might have a proposal for the board that would be operationally sound, but also legally valid. So I would not like to propose something that will give headache either to the board or to Mr. Karpinski, just because we believe on a staff level, it's operationally makes sense. So if that's okay with the board, maybe more on this topic at the October meeting, as we hope to wrap up our internal conversation on both operational and legal side of structuring approach to whom do we follow on Twitter.
Okay, that would be good. Has there been any progress yet on producing the list of who we currently follow?
So we did request the download from Twitter. The last thing that I heard is that we received the file, and again, the file will end up in with our IT manager because it's in some file extension that I really cannot talk about. So it will be provided to Janet to look. I apologize. I
Okay,
think
all right.
Mike's
What you, so
don't-
it's not in a condition that can be read by us yet.
No,
But,
no,
but,
we cannot
so-
just,
yeah, I understand.
Janet has to open it in something. I don't know exactly. So I
Okay,
apologize for
that's absolutely fine. Thank you. And discussing it next month is absolutely fine. Margie.
All right, thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Boris, for sending all this information as well as some of the updated action items. It provides a lot of clarity and insight. My question is just quickly in regards to the budget. Well, overall in the budget, we are doing pretty well, at least in terms of going over budget. I do notice that in certain line items, we have started to, and I understand those are just one or two line items, but I was also looking at the budget from last year and noticed that in certain line items where we have gone over for this year's budget, there wasn't like, even though we went over on certain line items last year, the proposed budget for this year was still the same as last year, even though like in last year's budget, those line items had been gone over. So I guess my question would be for the budget, I know that the budget, I guess my question is, does the budget often go over budget? And is that accounted for during budget season? Again, I just noted like very small line items this year that when we're starting to go over budget, but I just wanted to just kind of get clarity on that.
Okay. I would love to provide more clarity today, and I think we will have more detailed conversations going forward. Not to put any pressure on Chuck on this particular moment, but
Okay.
The conversation, every conversation about the budget that I had internally with OMB or the council staff or the board members since I took this job was about right sizing our budget. And it's on the staff level, and I think on the board level as well, we are all familiar with the unknowns that could come our way in terms of budget implementation versus what we budgeted in the beginning. What you have seen in the actual spending or actuals for the last fiscal year that we were over budgeted, that was the result of the postponed primaries and the fact that we implemented 2 elections within 1 fiscal year. Otherwise, those costs should be split, not equally, but they should be separated in 2 fiscal years. The reason why we ask for the same amount is basically historical practice, not just increased spending in the last fiscal year with July and November elections literally drain number of budget lines, not only ones. So right sizing the budget is a goal. It's a goal for all of us. And I am pretty sure that the board will do anything that the board can to support staff in getting that magic number, which will be right-sized budget for the, in my personal view, for the presidential versus gubernatorial elections because they are different. However, budget that was drafted for this year and sent to the first county board, county executive, and the council assumed 1 type of presidential elections in 2024. And then long-sitting senator from Maryland announced that he was not running for re-election. And the dynamic of the election that we had in mind changed. And that dynamic is not reflected in the budget draft that we submitted first to the board, then county executive, then county council. So these are dynamics that we wish we could address ahead of time, but I believe that it's impossible to the maximum possible extent. What we can do is aim to right size our budget. Another example that I think we touched upon this meeting today during the presentation of early voting. What will be the turnout in 2024 primary? We could guess. We don't know what will be distribution between mail, early voting, and election day. We have to plan for the higher number. And it's possible that on election day or early voting, there will be sites or polling places where we will have quite few election judges and maybe no voters. We have to plan as the voters will show up.
Okay, no, that's very, oh, sorry, did I
Yeah,
interrupt?
go ahead.
No, that's actually very helpful having that like historical insight and also anticipating as the budgets change and shift and looking at the future elections. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Other questions for Boris before we go to the board attorney report? I just want to thank, I guess since we did kind of merge the outreach into Boris's report, I want to thank Hilberto and Greg for joining Daniel, Keena, Margie, and me at the multicultural event at Silver Spring Civic Building yesterday. And it was a great event, and we were happy to work together to encourage everybody there to tell their friends and family about us. And I think they picked up a few election judge applications while they were there. So thank you for that. Okay, Kevin.
Okay, thank you. So one meeting that Boris may have skipped over was Boris, Mindy, Chris, and I had a brief meeting to start talking about the memorandums of understanding that need to be put in place for the 2024 election. We will need MOUs for those municipalities that have used our drop boxes, namely Gaithersburg, Rockville, Tacoma Park, Friendship Heights. That agreement will require that they are agreeing to keep and maintain the video surveillance from the time the drop box has been put in place until the end of the election, and then we need to maintain that data for 22 months pursuant to federal law. So we will need to have MOUs in place for those drop boxes. Mindy and Chris are working with Montgomery County Public Schools and Montgomery County Recreation to make sure that we have the surveillance that we will need for the drop boxes that will be at those locations. My recollection is in 2022, we actually acquired a separate server to download the information that's required for the drop boxes. The other MOUs that we will need will be obviously with Sandy Spring and with Gaithersburg regarding the use of the activity center in Sandy Spring for early voting. We will work on that. We will also have an MOU with Montgomery County with regard to the 14 early voting sites. And I may have missed it, and David, if your motion captured it, I apologize, but I'm less than clear that the board formally adopted the staff's recommendation on the 3 alternate sites.
Oh, that's a very good point. So why don't I move that right now? I move that the board adopt the staff's recommendation on the 3 alternate early voting sites. Ami, you second it, okay? Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. It is unanimous. Okay.
Okay. So the MOU that we have with Montgomery County will have those 3 alternate early voting sites in the event of an emergency that we need to move. Knock on wood, we've never had to move before, but we obviously need to have it in place, and obviously the staff needs to submit that to the State Board of Elections for approval. I think, Boris, those are the 3 alternates we've had for a long time.
Yes, I think that usually there were like only few alternates that were presented to the board. On some off years, there was other uses. I think there were sheltered some years, some of them, or they were going reconstruction. So board would usually go back and forth between a handful of alternate sites. These 3 that were presented to the board approved, I would say give kind of geographical coverage throughout the county. Right. So they are not concentrated in one part of the county more than the other.
Okay. So that covers sort of the legal MOUs that we're working on and making sure that we have everything in place for Dropbox security and having all of that for the election. The second is, I'm sure all of you probably have heard that there is a petition being circulated to impose term limits of 2 terms for the county executive. The petition circulator has asked a variety of questions, some of which are I'm able to answer just because Montgomery County seems to be the petition capital of Maryland in terms of getting petitions circulated. There's some questions involving how much money can be spent on various activities, and I'm scheduled to have a meeting with Jared Demeritus and Dan Corbin, the Assistant Attorney General assigned to the state board, to make sure that those finance questions get answered. And I will pass along those answers to the sponsor of the petition. The petition requires 10,000 valid signatures that need to be submitted by August of 2024. So this is something that, there's ample time for there to collect signatures, but Maryland has in its statute and through the cases by our Supreme Court of Maryland, formerly the Maryland Court of Appeals, has a rather unique standard for satisfying the signature voter registration or your surname of registration requirement. So for example, if I'm registered as Kevin B. Karpinski and I just signed Kevin Karpinski, that doesn't count. So actually the staff will need to go ahead and do the verification once the petition has been submitted. 10,000 signatures at a minimum need to be submitted before the staff can begin doing the verification process. But there is a process under which the person can supplement the signatures on a sort of a rolling basis. So that's the other issue. As Boris pointed out, we have started our discussions regarding the board's use of X, Twitter. The legal issue really that we need to really address, and Boris and I are working through is, the First Amendment has 3 standards to it. And when you open something up as a public forum, that requires that it's subject to strict scrutiny when you go ahead and you limit access to some, but not all. And you also expose yourself to potential viewpoint discrimination. So from that's sort of the legal component that we're working through. I have 2 of these cases in federal court right now, deleting comments from Facebook and other social media. And it's not as simple as it may seem when you're a government entity and you've opened something up to a public forum. There are lots of restrictions on what you can and cannot do with things you don't necessarily like to hear or see on your social media. So Boris and I will have a proposal to the board by next month for your consideration to address having a policy in place to be followed moving forward. Mr. President, unless there are any questions, that's all I have.
Well, thank you for that. On your last point, obviously there are issues with taking people off and there are issues with putting people on if you don't put everybody on. And I know it's a very complicated question, and I appreciate the fact that you are addressing it. Just for the benefit of our new members, am I correct that when it comes to the petition approval process, that is purely a staff process and you basically keep us informed, but we have no role in that process?
That's correct. It's purely a staff process using MD voters to make sure that the signature meets the requirements under Maryland law and meets all the other statutory requirements, for having a circulator's proper identification, date, a variety of other things. Before the staff begins processing the petition, we always do a training session that goes through what the staff needs to look at the end of that process. And it's, it goes through a number of staff members, and then there's senior staff review. But what comes out of it is a report that has the total number of signatures that were submitted, the number that were accepted, the number that were rejected, and then the rejection code is listed on that. Boris thereafter issues a determination as to whether a sufficient number of signatures met the requirements of Maryland law. That is sent to the petition sponsor. It's also posted on our website because an aggrieved person is just a registered voter in Montgomery County, has 10 days from the date of the determination by the election director to go ahead and challenge it. So out of fairness, to provide notice of the decision, it will get posted to the website because that's because Judge Battaglia told me she thought it was unfair many, many years ago when we had a petition case. And I learned some things from Judge Battaglia, and that was one of them, which is we posted on our website.
So Judge Battaglia wanted us to post what on our website?
There was a question of whether it was a timely challenge because under the county code, it's a two-step process. Now this is a charter amendment, so it's a one-step process. But one of the questions the Court of Appeals had to decide is it at the end of the process that you have 10 days to challenge, or do you have to challenge the first phase if you're going to make challenges to the first submission, which has to have 50% of the valid signatures? And of course, what Judge Battaglia pointed out during oral argument in that case was, well, how would I, as a registered voter, know that a determination has been made at all? And it's a valid point.
You would.
So we thereafter, that was in 2006, I believe. Ever since then, we've formally posted the determination on the website.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Kevin? Okay, thank you, Kevin.
Okay.
Boris, new business. 2024 election cycle polling places. You are mute. We cannot hear you, Boris.
I apologize. I just wanted to check with you that the website point of the agenda follows the board attorney's.
Oh, yes, you're right. I apologize. Do you have anything to report on the website?
Yeah, I just wanted very, very briefly to report to the board that we are updating some documents as we go along. I indicated the last time that we will update the frequently asked questions for mail-in voting. I would like to inform the board and the public that there is a possibility to submit a request to receive the list of voters who are on the permanent mail-in ballot list on our website. That's what we added. There was an issue raised last time about Twitter feed on the website, and I was told that since Twitter was, I would say, purchased, and there are certain changes that took place. I apologize here. The feed cannot appear on the website anymore unless you can only see the feed if you are currently signed into Twitter. And that is same for our website, for the county executive websites across the county government. So there are some rules that took place that affected us as well. I just would like to tell the board that this technology enterprise and business solution, so TEBS, someone that we work a lot with, we mentioned a lot. They are working on updating the design of websites for the county agencies and county departments. We got in contact with them, and they will be coming up with a proposal for the design of our homepage that will be in line with the design usability of county platform and the design across county agencies. So we spoke with them after the last board meeting, and we are waiting for some draft that we could reflect on that. I just would like to say that House Bill 410 required us to, from us to put a link up on the front page so everyone can sign up to be notified for the board meetings when polling places changes are being discussed. We had, as of today, 24 people signed up to be on that list going forward. We will keep the link up. I hope that for the next board meeting, that number will go up as well. These names are interested individuals and organizations, in addition to elected officials at the municipal, county, and the state level that we are mandated to send a notification out. I believe that I reported to the board that 174 notifications went out 2 weeks before this meeting as prescribed by House Bill 410.
Okay, thank you. Any questions about the website or anything that Boris just said on that subject? Okay, we have outreach on the agenda. I think we covered it, but is there anyone who has any other outreach things that they would like to discuss with Boris? Okay, so now we're up to the staff's memo about the 2024 election cycle polling places.
Okay, first, I would like to thank for this opportunity. The idea today was that we will just share with the board, present to the board, present to the general public, and inform the general public what staff's thinking in regards to the polling places for 2024. I believe that the idea was that leave maybe more thorough conversation for the next board meeting. A memo, a very short memo was produced. It's available on our website together with the alphanumerical list of polling places that staff is proposing for 2024. The memo recognized the fact that in run-up to 2022 elections, the board reflected on the decennial census and redistricting that took place and looked at the precincts throughout the county, and those precincts were reflected in the polling places that were introduced in 2022. Again, staff would like to advocate for continuity of those polling places as well. I believe the same argument that we had for the early voting sites, the same argument applied for the polling places. There are a few changes that are inevitable, that are a fact of life. What we listed here is that board had no option but to consolidate a number of polling places in 2022 because their home buildings, schools, were under renovation or construction. What happens now is that according to information that we have from MCPS, and those buildings are good to be used. Therefore, we just propose to split those polling places that were consolidated in 2022 due to ongoing constructions in their home buildings. The key legal aspect that I would like to emphasize is that we are legally required to meet the number of physical buildings used as a polling places in these 2024 elections to match the total number of physical buildings used as polling places in 2018 elections. So, since 2018, few things happened. A dramatic change in voters' preferences took place. As I said earlier, the decennial census took place, redistricting took place, but with the proposed changes that we listed in this memo, our number of buildings used for polling places in 2024 would be identical to 2018. So we would meet legal requirement without any need to write any exceptions or requests or something.
So, Boris, a question for you. It seems like in almost every election that I've been on the board, there have been schools that went into construction and came out of construction. And thus far, I have not heard about schools that are going into construction for the 2024 elections. Do we think that that is coming? Or do we think that for some reason this year is different? Or the timing of our elections making it different? I mean, what should we expect in terms of possible future need to consolidate polling places because of whatever is being constructed, say next year?
First of all, I really appreciate the question because it gives me an opportunity, both me and Mindy, to talk about a bit about the process that we do to arrive to this decision. Compared to the last primary, having primary in the middle of the school year, I would say helps, right? We are not in July, we are not in the time when schools would usually undergo maintenance, whether it's the roof, windows, HVAC, or anything else. The communication that we have with MCPS as the great partner, because most of the polling places are in MCPS facilities. That communication, that cooperation is ongoing. I was part of the meeting, I would say, Mindy, in May, if you correct me, when the first time this list that you have in your hands today was articulated as such. Maybe there were a few more items on it. I cannot recall exactly. We shared it with them CPS, and the reaction we got from them is that none of these buildings should be subject on any renovation or reconstruction to affect the voting process in 2024. However, that, as I said, it's ongoing conversation. If there are any changes that come online due to whatever internal MCPS reasons, whether it's additional funding provided or emergency, we will inform the board. As of today, based on our conversation with the MCPS, these buildings all should be good for 2024. However, we will run one more check before the October meeting, when the board, I believe, will have this on agenda for proper discussion, determination, and vote. So we will confirm.
Yeah, please do, because you'll have to pardon me for being skeptical, since it seems to happen a lot. And I know that there were years when 10% of our polling places were not available to us. And I know I don't need to tell you of the benefits of hearing as early as possible about these issues, so that we can find alternative locations if we need to. So please do, I know that you have a habit of making your list and checking it twice, and I think that this is certainly an occasion for doing that. So,
absolutely. As I said, and if there would be any changes, we will communicate it immediately with the board, and I will seriously, profoundly apologize for that, because approach we took is that in May, before the previous school year ended, we wanted to have this confirmation before the new school year starts. So that was our logic. But as I said, we try to confirm everything as we go.
No, it sounds right. It's just, I'll just say to my new colleagues in particular that, I can't remember the last election cycle where we didn't have construction going on in schools. It was not unique to 2022. I mean, yes, it was definitely made more complicated by the, July primary, et cetera. But this is an issue we've been talking about for a long time, and we've been dealing with. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that this is,
I appreciate it.
in fact, what's actually going to happen, and we'll have fewer things that we have to worry about than usual, because it is better for the voters to keep going back to the same locations.
I agree.
Anything else on that subject? Okay, Boris, I believe you had one more. I'm going back to my agenda. I think you had, the legal descriptions of the precinct boundaries.
So if we shared, again, in run-up to 2022 elections, the board reviewed the precincts across the county and changed certain boundaries. The staff has produced the legal description, which is narrative description of those boundaries for affected precincts. The document was, as one scanned document, was shared with the board. I believe that we have 76 legal descriptions in that document. That document is available on our website, and I think that we touched upon this a little bit. It would be beneficial to give a chance to general public to potentially find their precinct and confirm that legal boundary. Recognizing that document is quite big. I think it's 150 something pages of legal descriptions. Today is September 18. If we could ask general public to give us any comments that they might have by I apologize.
2 weeks? Maybe, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out. I don't know if there's any magic to any particular time. To me, the most important thing is how you get the word out to people that it's there.
Yeah.
So that they can look at it. Because for most people, they're going to look at their own precinct and they're going to say yay or nay, and that will be most of what they do. There may be some political junkies out there who will look at them all, but
I agree, but the link is already provided on our website under the board's meeting for September 18th.
right. But
We will
someone has
make a
to know
link on the
that it's there.
homepage. Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
will make the link available through our homepage. But
Great.
again, these are post-meeting. We had to go through the meeting and
No,
present the option, which I believe the board president already supports.
No,
So maybe to give
I'm good with that.
Yeah, maybe to give general public until October 2nd, which is Monday, which would give us some time to reflect on the comments that we received, sorry, from the general public, and compare them against the maps that we have here, so we can come up with the corrected version for the next board meeting.
Okay, and I'll come to you, Ami, in just a second. Are we doing more than just putting an announcement on our website? Is there going to be any email, press release or something that's going to tell people it's there?
We can do that. We can announce. We can make it a part of the press release upon following today's board meeting, that these legal descriptions would be available on our website. When it comes to the email list, I will be kind of reluctant, because email list that we use to notify everyone about today's meeting includes all the election officials as prescribed by the law. And I'm not sure the legal descriptions would qualify as a board's determination of change of polling places going forward.
Because it's not a change, it's the description of what we've already done.
Yeah, it's basically in retrospect what was completed. There's no effort to change it going forward, right?
Okay, Ami.
Yeah, I was just gonna say almost the same thing you did. It seems to me that we ought to put out a press release saying that this list is being made available through a link on the website for anyone to comment on that wishes to.
That works.
Works for me. Anyone else? Okay, so list of future action items from today's meeting.
I'll be honest with you. I just recorded one that was articulated about policy on social media we use, and if I understood it well, or I'm okay to understand it like that, I could say something more about messaging on undeliverable mail for the next board meeting that was addressed at the very beginning that Mr. Roscoe's Nick's case was touched upon.
And
So-
I think that we also said pretty directly that we want direct outreach to the 5 Republican women's groups that that Ami provided on July 31st, without including the Republican Central Committee. And then
And Poolsville attendance, I have to confirm.
yes, and Poolsville attendance to confirm. Does anyone remember any other follow-ups from today's meeting?
And you're still following up on the list for the Twitter X and stuff.
Confirm Poolsville
Yes, yes, we do want the list of the groups we're following on X when it's available, but I do realize that it sounds like it's much more complicated thing than it used to be, or than I would have thought.
We follow.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, anything else that people have on the follow-up list? This is
I
not,
have
this is
6
not,
items.
yeah, this is not actually the last opportunity. If you see things, you remember things later, let us, let Boris know, let us know, but the goal of having this on the agenda is to not let anything leave, not to forget anything, because we have 7 people's memories here that we can rely upon as to what happened in this meeting. So anyway, okay, we are, as per my my email to the board and the staff, we are going to postpone the approval of the July 31 minutes until next meeting, and hopefully I will get you my comments far before that. Do we have anything else that anyone wants to bring up for the good of the order? Okay, well, thank you very much for a very productive meeting. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you all.
care.
Thank you, Boris.
Thank you all.
Okay, take care.
You have to adjourn.
David, do you need to adjourn?
The meeting is adjourned. We get to the end of the agenda. There is no requirement for a vote.
Hey,
No, I
So-
understand that, but a
It's-
notice of adjournment.
Okay,
no, Lisa
okay.
is just making you know
Okay.
that there is notice.
Okay, Lisa, in the future, feel free to declare the meeting adjourned if I don't, but let's just say the meeting is hereby adjourned.
Thank you, thank
Thank
you.
you,
Okay.
David.
I will try to remember that next month.
Thank you,
Okay.
David. Okay,
All
bye.
right, bye-bye.